Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to TDC.
It's a pleasure to be here today.
So this is one of the reasons I love Menti, because you can actually...
It's your time. Show us that video.
Memory is really important.
Teaching is the best profession because we are resilient.
Hopefully you can see how you can change this.
Welcome and good afternoon to all teachers attending the 2021 TDC Cusco edition. organized by the SBS, Librería Internacional, and IPNA Cusco. My name is Eric Rosales, and I'm grateful to be here. I'll be your host for today's conference. We know that with adversities, new ideas arise, and today we're excited about hearing our speakers talk about new hybrid methodologies in these challenging but meaningful times. On behalf of SBS, Librería Internacional, and IPNA Cusco, we would like to thank you for attending this event, in which we'll go through this and almost 2 years of 100% virtual education have meant and the way it reshaped English language teaching and learning. It has posed many challenges and opportunities for learners, teachers, and administrators. The shift to online learning demanded that teachers and students adapt to virtual spaces and that they become more creative and more collaborative. At SBS, we have this great opportunity to be in contact with the best publishers in the world, and this makes it possible for us to bring together in a single event some of the best international specialists representing publishers and bringing with them knowledge that has been developed in different parts of the world and to apply successfully in our English teaching here in our schools, cities, and countries. This year, 2021, is particularly special. It is a particularly special year for SBS Librería Internacional, as we celebrate 25 years in the Peruvian market, 25 years of effort to bring all regions of Peru the best content for learning languages, science, and general interests. 25 years working with values and with the objective of contributing education hand in hand with all of you. Without further ado, I would like to invite you to watch the following video with me. Let's go, team.
En SBS, Librería Internacional, estamos comprometidos con la educación y la difusión de la cultura a través de materiales físicos y digitales. Somos una de las cadenas más grandes de Sudamérica, orientada a producir y distribuir libros de idiomas, académicos y de interés general, así como bibliografía clásica e imprescindible. Hemos consolidado nuestra presencia en Perú con librerías ubicadas estratégicamente en los departamentos de Lima, Cusco, Arequipa, Trujillo, Piura, Chiclayo, Iquitos y Huancayo. Además de una librería online, donde presentamos una gran variedad de títulos que podrás recibir desde la comodidad de tu hogar, gracias a nuestro servicio de delivery a nivel nacional. SBS, Librería Internacional. 25 años comprometidos con la calidad educativa y la difusión de la cultura en el Perú. Soluciones para quien enseña y para quien aprende.
Thank you. As you may know, IPNA is a leading English educator in our country, Peru. It has a long trajectory of success, building confident professionals in one of the most spoken languages around the world. It is an honor to be part of this organization that not only is it changing minds, but lives. Next, we have a video about our institution and words from our general director. Let's go, team.
afternoon. On behalf of the Instituto Cultural Peruano Norteamericano del Cusco and Special Book Services, I have great pleasure in welcoming you all to the 2021 Virtual Teaching Development Conference, Cusco Edition. This conference is named What the Future Holds for English Language Teaching. The pandemic has definitely reshaped English language teaching and learning. It has posed many challenges and opportunities for learners, teachers, and administrators. The shift to online learning demanded that teachers and students adapt to virtual spaces and that they become more creative and more collaborative. After almost 2 years of remote teaching, are we ready to return to face-to-face instruction? What possibilities do we envision for ELT? Is hybrid teaching the future? What does the future of ELT look like? Dear teachers, we have a common goal of improving the teaching and learning of English, and this online conference is a precious opportunity to exchange ideas and information. I would like to extend my sincere thanks to Mrs. Josefa Bonilla, General Manager of Special Book Services Peru, for allowing us to host this event. I would also like to extend a special welcome to our speakers from National Geographic Learning, Oxford University Press, and Pearson Education. I wish you all a rewarding and successful conference, and we hope to have the 2022 TDC Cusco edition face-to-face. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim. Now, I'm going to talk about how certificates of attendance to this event will be issued. All registered participants of this event will receive a link at the end of the TDC so that they can register their information for the certificate. The certificate will be awarded to participants who attend 100% of the TDC conferences. That is to say, 3 conferences. If you have not registered, please do it now in the link you will find in the comments section. Let's start our first session of TDC 2021 Cusco Edition by giving a big welcome to Nat Geo Learning. National Geographic Learning's mission is to bring the world to the classroom and the classroom to life with either English language programs, its students learning about the world by experiencing it. Through their partnerships with National Geographic and TED, they developed the language and the skills they need to be successful global citizens and leaders. So let's find out a bit more about Nat Geo Learning with this short video. Let's go, team.
At National Geographic Learning, we serve English learners by reflecting the mission and work of National Geographic in our programs. We are inspired by Alexander Graham Bell's original goal for the magazine to be about the world and all that is in it. And we try to bring the world to the classroom and the classroom to life. If you look at our learning programs, you'll see that they're like workbook versions of National Geographic, filled with incredible photography, fascinating stories, and the real work of explorers. Explorers in particular resonate with learners because the explorer's search for knowledge and understanding is the very essence of education. At National Geographic Learning, we believe it's an incredible world, and we want to share that with students. We want students to be filled with awe and curiosity by amazing photographs and stories of their world and all that is in it. Because we know that a curious student is a motivated student, and we believe that a motivated student will be a successful student. With our programs, we're always mindful that we're not just teaching vocabulary and grammar. We're opening up the world to students who have otherwise not experienced it. Students in China, Vietnam, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, Eastern Europe, literally everywhere. We want to help these students experience their world and develop their voices. Besides having great National Geographic content, we also work with TED Talks, and we are TED's exclusive partner in English language education. TED Talks are the single most widely sourced videos for English learners popular both because of the ideas in the talks and because of the natural English used by both native and non-native TED speakers. Ultimately, the incredible content we have from National Geographic and TED enables us to develop programs that are relevant, motivating, and powerful learning tools that bring the world to the classroom and the classroom to life.
Thank you very much, Tim. Now, we're going to introduce our first speaker for this afternoon, renowned specialist and consultant Maria Trapero Davila, on the topic, Tips for Hybrid Teaching and Learning. Maria is passionate about education and believes in the importance of the role of teachers and the difference they make in their students' lives. She holds a BA in Pedagogy and an MD in Education and several diplomas and certifications as an English language teacher and a teacher trainer, of course. She's currently working on a doctoral program in education technology. She has been a teacher and a teacher trainer and a speaker at national and international events for many years. She was a member of the executive board of the Mexican Association of Teachers of English, MEXTSO, holding different positions including national president and convention chair. She's also a member of TESOL International and the Latin American TESOL Group. She was an ESL coordinator at a private school and a university professor. She is the academic director of a language school and an examiner for international exams and an academic consultant for National Geographic Learning. Welcome to TDC, Maria. It's good to have you here.
Thank you very much. It is my pleasure. Thank you for the invitation. I am honored to be sharing with you and with all these teachers from different parts of the world, because I was looking at the comments and I noticed that there are people from different countries. So very honored to be here with you this afternoon for some of you. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about hybrid teaching and learning. This is something that we have been reflecting upon and talking about a lot lately. And as the video in the introduction was mentioning, about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, we were thrown into this pool and we had to learn to swim in the waters of the online teaching and all the different resources. Some of us were prepared, some of us weren't, but we had to do it, right? We were all forced to stay at home and we had to come up with solutions to a situation. Well, now, little by little, we're going back to the classrooms and now we are thrown into a different pool and we have to learn a different style of swimming, and that's hybrid teaching. All right, so that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to talk about the different ways in which we can implement hybrid teaching and learning, and also some tips on how to approach this new methodology or this new situation in the best way possible and be successful. All right, so I would like to involve all of you. So I am going to ask you to please scan this QR code and go to this platform and write 3 words that come to your mind when you think about hybrid teaching and learning. Those 3 words that you can think about or that are connected with this new concept of this new situation, hybrid teaching and learning. Okay, so please scan the QR code, or you can also go to menti.com and introduce that code. And also in the chat, they are sharing with you a link so that you can go directly. All right. So please, either way, with the QR code, with menti.com and the code, or through the link, please write 3 words that you associate with hybrid teaching and learning. Okay. And we're going to go into there. I'm going to give you a minute so that you can complete this, and then we're going to project what you are coming up with, what your responses are, okay? So here we go. Okay, some answers are coming in. So let's share. Okay, we can see a lot of words, that are coming in already, and a lot of you are sending your participation, and that's wonderful. And you can start identifying some words already, right? Technology, of course, interaction, planning, online, creativity, challenging, internet, face-to-face and online, of course, communication, adaptation, gamification, online courses, environment, humanity, virtual classes, wisdom, globalization, blended physical environment, mixture of digital and face to face, I suppose, online creativity, wonderful word, um, adaptation, planning, organization, computer, dynamic, virtual, interaction, blended, humanity, digital. Thank you. Thank you for all those words that are coming in. Thank you for sharing with us what you are all think about hybrid teaching and learning. And yes, you are completely right. All of these words are connected to hybrid teaching and learning, right? All of these words that you're looking at and that you are all sharing are definitely connected with hybrid teaching. And this is what we're going to be talking about today. So just to close this little activity, we have the words that are the biggest are the ones that are repeated the most. So we have organization, creativity, planning, online, technology, challenging, learning, interaction, face-to-face, online, gamification, planning, challenging, innovating. All right. Thank you very much. Let's go back to our presentation so that we can continue. Right? And let's share that presentation again. Here we go. All right, thank you. Let's talk a little bit about this online learning spectrum, okay? And we go from face to face, which is the traditional way that most of us were used to, and all the way to the online that we were forced to go into during the pandemic, right? So face to face is basically 100% classroom, school. We are there. We're doing everything face to face. We're doing every interaction possible. We're having all these possibilities within the classroom. Technology, it's incorporated, a little bit, maybe with a projector we are using in the classroom, or maybe some audio and video that we are using. But basically, everything is face to face, right? Then we go to blended instruction or web enhanced instruction. And that is basically the same classroom activities, interaction, etc. But then there is some technology used to facilitate activities or to deliver content or to assess students. All right. So for example, if you're working in the classroom, but then you have a learning management system that you use for online practice or for generating exams or evaluating, then that is blended, right? And then we go all the way to the right to the online, and this is basically everything done online, maybe except for a couple of sessions in which you bring students into school for orientation or at the beginning or for evaluation at the end. But basically, most of the sessions and work and assignments are done online. And then we come to hybrid instruction. Hybrid instruction, it's considered towards, the online side, towards the right, because we have online and face-to-face instruction happening at the same time and being integrated, right? There is a substantial amount of in the classroom time or students working in the classroom, but also students working online and completing assignments and participating online. So basically, this is the spectrum, and we are going to focus on hybrid instruction today. So to define what hybrid teaching and learning is, and of course, all of the words that you mentioned are somehow connected to these definitions. Very simple definition, but here we are. So this is simultaneous meeting of teachers and students, where one part of the participants attends the meeting physically in the classroom, in the school, and the other one the other group is going to attend virtually, okay? A video conference on a platform, etc. And of course, these are the two words that we are going, or phrases that we're going to be working with: face-to-face and online, which is what we are going to be dealing with in this session. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the characteristics of face-to-face learning and online learning. And not just the general characteristics, but some very positive features of both. All right. For example, in face-to-face learning, we get to have discussions in the classroom. Students can interact, students can work in pairs, they can work in groups, they can participate in debates, in activities in which they can talk to each other, they can talk to the teacher, and there are a lot of opportunities for discussion. Also, group work is very possible. It's easier to manage, right? You organize the students into different groups, and they can concentrate on different activities or the same activity, but with different perspectives. And the teacher can monitor the work of everybody. And the teacher can be looking at one team and then listening and paying attention to the other team on the side also, right? So this group work, it's something that really can happen in face-to-face learning. Also, presentations. Students can come up to the front and share, show and tell, or impromptu presentations or prepare presentations. They can use prompts and they can have questions and answers. So it's a very good experience with presentations here. Visual cues, and this is probably something that I miss the most of face-to-face learning. It's looking at people's faces, looking at people's nonverbal communication. Sometimes when we are teaching, we can really tell that a student is getting everything that we're working with, or it's not getting the ideas across, right? So we can see those question marks on their faces sometimes. And this doesn't really happen on online learning. This is really difficult to be able to spot those things on their faces because sometimes their cameras are off and we cannot see them, right? Also, immediate interaction. This is something that it's natural in the classroom, in the face-to-face learning situation, because everybody's just talking and answering back. And if you ask a question, people raise their hands or they answer the questions, etc. But it's not really happen. This does not really happen on online learning. And finally, community. You can really form community. You can have relationships. We can have communication in different terms. And that sense of community that happens on the face-to-face learning situation, it's not the same online, right? Or it could be, but there are some difficulties. All right, now let's talk about online learning. There is independence, and we want our students to develop some independence and some learner autonomy. So having the possibility of accessing the materials and the activities in the assignments at different moments in the day and allowing them to organize their schedule, etc., that and let them work on their own, that promotes that learner independence and autonomy. And that's something really good. We also have opportunities for innovative collaboration. For example, the activity that we just did, in which we created that word cloud, right? We were collaborating. Everybody was sending their words, and we were all looking at what everybody was sending from all over the world, right? And that it's innovative, and that's wonderful that we can do that. Technology, of course, makes a difference in many situations. So the possibility of using all this technology, all these platforms, and bring them into the classroom and enhance the opportunities for students is wonderful. There is a lot of flexibility, a lot of access, and it is possible to adapt to different circumstances and situations. So all of these is the online learning, and all of that on the left is face-to-face learning, right? Well, what happens in hybrid classes is that we are going to put all those wonderful characteristics together. We're going to get all the good aspects of online learning and the good parts of face-to-face learning, and we're going to put them together. We're going to get the best of both worlds, and we're going to have a powerful learning opportunity. Powerful learning opportunities for our students to develop many different things. And we can take advantage of all these wonderful characteristics from both. So some of us were worried, and some of us could feel that hybrid learning is very challenging, and it is. That requires a lot of work and a lot of planning, and it probably does. But we can also see the positive aspect of hybrid learning in terms of these wonderful opportunities that we are creating for our students. All right. Now, how does it work? How are we going to organize our classes and our sessions and our groups? How can hybrid learning take place? There are many different possibilities. And for example, we have two groups with alternating, two groups without alternation, new groups each week, and small groups in person. Let's take a look. This one, for example, it's two groups alternating. So for example, you have these students on the left joining online, and the students on the right joining directly in the room, in the classroom, right? And these can alternate. So one week, the students that were online, next week they are going to come to the classroom. And the students that were in the classroom next week are going to come or stay at home and work online. So they are going to be alternating, right? So both groups are going to get to be in the classroom for 1 week and be online for 1 week, for example. Another possibility is the same two groups, but they will always stay the same. So the students that are joining online will always be online, and the students that are joining in the classroom will always be in the classroom. This is especially necessary, staying online all the time, especially when students have a certain situation, a health situation, or they are far away, and it's a lot easier to join online than travel back and forth to the school. But this is also a possibility. Another possibility is that we have new groups each week, and students sometimes work virtually, sometimes work physically, but not with the same people, right? So for example, here we have these two students working online and these two students working in the classroom. And for the following week, in this case, the girls, just to give you an example, are going to switch. And the teams or the groups are going to be different, okay? And then the last possibility is that we have small groups in person all the time, and we alternate the schedules or the dates, right? So we have week 1, for example, or meeting 1, at, 9 o'clock, and then meeting 2 at 10 o'clock. So everybody gets to come and everybody gets to stay home at some point. different ways that you can do it, different possibilities. Your school and the teachers and the administrators and everybody can decide on what is the best situation for your school, for your students, etc. But let's talk about some tips, some suggestions on how to approach this new situation, this hybrid teaching and learning situation. Okay? And the first tip that I have for you is take it easy. Don't panic. All right. You might be presented with a situation that is unknown to you. Maybe you feel uncomfortable because it's something that you've never done and you feel that it's going to be too challenging. Well, take it easy. It's a new challenge, that's all. We were able to deal with the challenge of the pandemic and online teaching. We can deal with this challenge also. What can we do? Well, we can plan. Let's plan. Planning and organizing is going to help us feel better, feel more confident. Okay, it is important that we focus on the goals of the course, that we focus on the objectives, and to set up smart objectives so that we are able to achieve them. And also, start small. All right, don't try to do everything or too much. Start small, little by little. And as you go, as you experience the different activities, you're going to see what works best and what doesn't really work. And you're going to learn as you go. Okay? Keep technology simple. The more sophisticated, the more complicated, or the more likely to fail too. So start simple. You don't really need a lot of technology and a lot of or specialized equipment or anything. You can start little by little and keep it simple. And little by little, again, you're going to be looking at what works better and what you can incorporate in terms of activities and in terms of technology as well. And don't burn yourself out. This is very easy for you to let it happen. If we are overwhelmed, we're going to be burnt out, and we are going to be tempted to quit, right? Well, let's keep it easy. Let's take it easy. Let's start little by little, and that way we're not going to be burnt out. Okay. The next tip, the next suggestion is to focus on design, not so much on technology. Technology is important, of course, and we're going to talk a little bit about that a little bit later, but it can be overwhelming also. There are so many new apps and new platforms and new possibilities, right? We cannot design a course or prepare our lessons based on the technology. We need to focus on our goals, on our objectives, and make sure that we focus on those and we design our classes and our activities and our lessons taking those objectives and goals into account. And then select the technology that it's going to help me achieve the goal that I need to achieve, right? And so there are many new activities, many new exercises that you can do, but don't overload the course. Okay, don't be tempted to introduce so much and I'm going to use all of these into my class. Well, that can be overwhelming also for you and for the students as well. All right, so try to focus on the goals, focus on the design of your course, and then look at the technology and see what it's going to help for you, work for you. Okay, and of course, focus on the integration of the online and the face-to-face component. The tip number 3 is use the resources that are already available. There are many resources that we have been using during the pandemic. We learned a lot about all these different platforms, like with games, with interaction, with collaboration tools to create worksheets and things like that, to join online, etc. And of course, we have the apps, the Google apps that can make our life easier, like Google Drive and Google Classroom and Google Forms, right? And all of these resources, if that you have already been using for your online classes, you can continue using them for the hybrid classes as well, right? You can continue taking advantage of those platforms and maybe learn about a few others, and make sure that again, don't be overwhelmed with all these resources, and use what it's already there. Okay. Most of these platforms have the free component and the premium component. If you think that you're not going to use it so much, maybe the free version, it's more than enough. Or if there is one that you really like and that you're really using, maybe you can consider paying for the premium platform or the premium account. But most of the free resources are more than enough. So just go over them and select what you think is going to work for you and use it, and incorporate them little by little. Don't try to use them all at once. Incorporate them little by little, try them, and see what happens. All right. Also, take advantage of the resources that your materials already have. For example, if you're using National Geographic learning materials or books, you have classroom presentation tools, you have companion websites, you have online practice websites, you have exam generators or test generators, you have additional resources, downloadable additional resources that you can have access to. So take advantage of those, and you can see what you can use for both your students in the classroom and your students online, right? All right. Don't do it alone. This is probably one of my favorite tips, because I have always believed in the power of teachers working together. Collaboration among peers, among colleagues, is so important. It is so good to talk to each other, talk to other teachers, and see what they are going through and what they have learned, and learn together, right? You can share experiences, you can share tips, you can share platforms or activities, and you can work together and you can achieve so much together. So my recommendation is that you find opportunities to collaborate with your peers, with your colleagues, and find opportunities to share your knowledge and your experience, and so that you can grow together. And what has already worked for somebody, you can take advantage of that and use it in your classes. And maybe you have already experienced something and you had a bad experience, and you can share that too, and you say, hey, this, I already tried it and it didn't work. Okay, so let's figure out another way to do it, or how to approach it in a different way so that it works next time. But again, talk to your colleagues, work together, find opportunities for collaboration, for mentoring each other, for coaching each other. And I'm sure your experience is going to be a very good experience. Tip number 5 is manage your students' expectations. And I really like this picture because when I saw this picture, I thought it was a perfect picture for talking about expectations, right? Sometimes we reach the top and we achieve something, and then we need to start looking at other goals, at other new projects, right? So that I feel that this is what happened to us in this pandemic, right? When we were figuring out the online teaching, when we were starting to feel comfortable with the situation, now we need to look at something else, right? Now we need to go into hybrid teaching and learning. And well, that's good, because we're always learning and always moving forward. All right. It is important to explain and justify our courses to our students, that they understand how it's going to work, how it is going to be organized, when is it that they are going to come to the classroom, when is it that they're going to join online, how they are expected to send their homeworks or assignments, etc. So communication and organization, it's very important. All right. It is important that students understand the difference or the equivalence between the activities that they're going to do online and the activities that they're going to do in the classroom, how to turn them into the teacher, if there is a different value or etc. So this is important too. It is also important that your students know the technical requirements. For example, if they're going to be working online, of course, they have to be on a computer or on a device. They have to have access to the internet. They have to have maybe an email account or a Google Drive account, etc., so that they can access the different resources that you're going to be sending. Also, it is very important that we make our course expectations as explicit as possible. It is important that we give schedules, that we assign the work, etc., and everything is clear to everyone. Using a platform like Google Classroom, for example, helps you organize the activities, assign, specify due dates, organize in sections, etc. So find a platform that you can use or find a resource that you can use to organize all of these lessons and activities so that it's easier for your students to follow the schedule and the program, right? And of course, we need to develop plans, materials, and activities that help students with technology. And also, these, whenever we see a book, for example, if you're using a book, a textbook, and you have to look at these materials with a two-sided or two-colored lenses, right? I keep thinking about those. Remember those cardboard little glasses that we receive when we go to the 3D movies that has one a red side and one blue side? Well, that's how I can start thinking about this new approach, right? Because we need to put those glasses on and look at the activities and exercises and everything that we do with those two filters, right? The one for online students and the one for in-classroom students. So whenever you see an activity or an exercise, you have to think, okay, how am I going to present it to my online students? How am I going to present it to my in-room students? How are they going to complete it? How are they going to complete it? And so on and so forth, right? Now, we need to anticipate problems, right? We need to be prepared for what is going to happen. I was going through when I was preparing this presentation, and I found that picture, and I was, this is exactly how some of us feel when we are when we find problems. Sometimes we cannot connect. Maybe the computer freezes, or for some reason nothing is working, and there is a lot of frustration, right? Well, we need to anticipate problems. We should have a plan B all the time for whatever situation that can happen, right? So one recommendation is to use simpler technologies to reduce the risk and complications. So the more sophisticated the equipment and the technology that we use, the more possibilities for problems. So keep it simple, and that way you're going to avoid these complications, right? Also, when there is a long activity or a long project, sometimes it will be easy for students to get lost in the process. So my recommendation is to break down the activity into shorter activities that connect. And in the end, you complete a project, right? So it is easier to follow up. It's easier to give instructions and complete activity by activity. And then at the end, you put them all together, and there you go. You have a project, right? Also, provide time management tips for your students. Talk to them, tell them, give them suggestions on how to organize their time, how to access the platform, how to complete the activities. Give them suggestions and tips on how to organize themselves. We want to develop learner autonomy. We want them to be independent, as we mentioned before, but some of them may need some support. So let's make sure that we provide that support to them. Let's be very clear about what students are expected to do and how you will be grading them. Provide an evaluation form, provide rubrics, checklists, and make sure that they understand what is going to be taken into account, what the project should include, the dates that they are supposed to turn in the projects or assignments, etc. So it's important for them to have all the information that they need so that they can organize their time and organize their work. And this is going to help you avoid problems and misunderstanding as well. Prepare technology help sheets. Maybe you can write the instructions down and make sure that everybody has them so that when they are logging in or accessing online, they know what to do, step-by-step instructions, and even some frequently asked questions. And most platforms already have these, so you only have to adapt it for your own situation. And you can share that with your students, and that way, whenever they have a problem, they will be able to take a look at that help sheet and they will be able to solve those problems. Identify place to go for live technology help. Most platforms have like a chat, or maybe there is an IT person in your school that you can talk to, and make sure that you have help so that you can solve these problems. And of course, develop a plan for conducting course activities when technology fails. What is going to happen if the internet is disconnected? Well, you can tell your students, in case this happens, you can continue doing this and you can turn it in this way. For example, since the platform is off, maybe you can send it through the email or by text message or whatever you decide, but have a plan B. And it's always a good idea. And anticipating these problems, you're going to solve them in a much faster way. And finally, it's the little things that count. Okay. These are my final recommendations. And the first one is that things will occasionally go wrong. And it's okay. It is okay. Don't panic. Sometimes things don't go the way we plan them. We need to be flexible. We need to be sensible and say, okay, all right, it didn't work the way I was planning it would work, and there is a problem. Let's solve it. Okay, let's learn from the experience and move on. Right? We have to be conscious of that, and we have to be confident that it's not our fault. It's just we are learning. We are in the process of learning. Okay, as long as we're doing our part, and as long as we're planning and we are organizing and we are informing our students, etc., then if something goes wrong, well, we need to overcome it and move on. All right, don't panic. And the second part of this last tip is ask for feedback from your students. Your students are the ones experiencing the learning part, right? Remember, for the teaching part, you can talk to your colleagues and learn and collaborate with with other teachers. But students are the ones experiencing this hybrid learning part. So listen to them, ask them how they feel, what difficulties they've encountered, how they are coming up with things, if they have any difficulties, etc. Listen to what they have to say, take it into account, and use it. Use this feedback to make changes to your program, or to use different resources, or organize things a little bit different maybe, so that you benefit your students. Right? Listening to your students is always a good idea. Don't organize your course too tightly. If you include too many activities, if you have a very packed program, and then you don't have time to do everything, and you're not able to complete everything that you had planned on, a sense of frustration will come, and your students are going to be questioning you, why didn't we cover these, or why didn't we cover that? So it's better to keep it simple, to organize it in a way that it's flexible. And if you have additional time, of course, prepare a couple of things or a few things extra that in case you have additional time, you can incorporate those elements to the program, right? But avoid packing it too tightly. Then another suggestion is to keep up to date. This is both for the students and for the teachers. If students have a list of activities or assignments that they need to complete, and they fall behind on one activity, it's very likely that they are going to start falling behind in everything. All right. So it is important to keep up to date so that they don't fall behind too much later on. And for the teachers, is the same thing. If you don't keep the reviewing and the marking of the papers and the assignments up to date, it is very easy that before you know it, you're going to have 5,000 assignments that you need to correct at once, and it's going to be a very difficult situation. So try to keep it simple and up to date so that you can review everything that you need to review and mark everything that you need to mark. And of course, use the resources available, right? For example, Google Form has this option that it grades itself, right? So you only have to go and check the already graded answers. Or exam platforms like the one we use, for example, has a possibility for the exam to be graded automatically. Online platforms also automatically grade the activities, and you only have to go and check what the results are. So take advantage of those so that you can keep up to date. All right. And finally, use the tools in the course management system to get organized and stay organized, right? I was mentioning Google Classroom before and how these tools are going to provide all the support so that you can stay organized. And this is going to be very helpful for your students as well. So both your students online and in the classroom can benefit from these resources. And something that it's important here is that students that are going to be working in the classroom face to face, it doesn't mean that they're not going to be accessing online activities. All right. It is possible for them to go online for completing activities and exercises. They can also access the resources on Google Drive, for example. And so they will continue to use technology. They just come to class for interaction and do the activities in the class, but they will continue to use technology, right? Also, it is possible to find ways for students to interact with each other. I mean, the students online and the students in the classroom can also interact. There are many different ways. For example, this Menti that we did at the beginning, the word cloud, well, students in the classroom can use their phones or their devices to participate, and students online can use their computers at home, right? So it is possible to have that interaction as well. Okay, so this is the last of our tips. It is my pleasure again to be participating with you. And I think we can open for questions now. We have a few minutes to answer some questions. So if you have any questions, please send them in and we'll see. All right. How to manage our time in the new blended approach. Managing time, it's always a challenge, okay? Whether you are working online, working face-to-face, or in hybrid situation. Managing time, it will always be a challenge. So in the same way as you do for the other situations, you can apply different strategies. Of course, having an agenda, having these specific, for example, in Google Classroom, you can have the dates, you can have a calendar, you can assign the activities, and that way your students are going to be able to follow the assignments and the due dates, etc. Right? You make sure that when you write your lesson plans for the classes or your plan for the week, make sure that it's not oversaturated so that you have enough time to do and complete all these assignments. Always have a plan B, always have additional activities just in case, but don't make it too heavy, because if you do, you might not have time to complete it. All right, so the same strategies that you use for managing time in the class in 100% face-to-face or 100% online, these are the same strategies that you can use for hybrid teaching. Okay, thank you. Is there another question? Thank you, Ingrid. Possible solutions for technology problems. Some students don't know how to handle an app or register. All right. Thank you, Cheryl. I think that, for example, if there is a new app that you're going to be using in the classroom and they need to create their own accounts, take some time during the class and show them how to do it, right? And do it together. And if you do it together, it's going to be a lot easier and you will be able to answer their questions right there and then, right? Also, you can prepare that technology help sheet that I was mentioning with steps to follow. So you can tell them, okay, number 1, open this window. Number 2, introduce your email. Number 3, etc. Right? So they can follow that if they're going to do it on their own. So whether you do it in the classroom, or in the during class time, whether online or face-to-face, you do it with them and you guide them through the process, or you prepare that instruction guide with step-by-steps that they can follow, and that way they're going to solve that. Thank you, Cheryl. What is the best number of students to work with in this type of class? Well, it all depends, okay? And of course, the bigger the class, the higher the challenges, right? So if you have a smaller group, it's going to be a lot easier to handle and to be in contact with them and have collaborations and to have participation in class, and everybody gets to do something because it's a small group. But there are some benefits of having a large group as well. There is more interaction, there are more opinions, there are more opportunities to cover different topics. And so you can figure out different ways on how to deal with this. And of course, we've done it before with face-to-face groups. We can do it with hybrid teaching again. Thank you. Thank you. All right, I guess we don't have time for more questions. It has been a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you very much.
The pleasure is ours, Maria. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Continuing with the agenda, let's start this afternoon's session by giving a warm welcome to Oxford University Press. Oxford University Press advances knowledge and learning, from a child reading their first words to a researcher expanding the frontiers of their field. The possibilities are endless. Established in the earliest days of printing and throughout their 400-year history, they have always been home to the inquisitive, the passionate, and ambitious. Now, let's learn a little bit more about Oxford University Press by watching this short video. Let's go, team.
Learning underpin the progress we make as individuals and as a society. When we know more, we can solve new problems and explore fresh possibilities. For hundreds of years, Oxford University Press has been committed to sharing the best in human thinking. From a child reading their very first words to a researcher expanding the frontiers of their field, we passionately believe in the transformative power of knowledge and learning to inspire progress and realize human potential. But the world is changing. When all information is at our fingertips, data needs understanding. As content crowds every screen, ideas need space to breathe. And when the next great thinker can come from anywhere, they need to be seen. So Oxford University Press is changing too. Whether we're making learning work for anyone, anywhere, anytime, connecting a global community of English language learners, or helping influential ideas achieve greatest impact. We will meet the needs of education and research in new ways, with new ideas, for new audiences. For as long as the world keeps making progress, we will always be advancing knowledge and learning. Oxford University Press. Advancing knowledge and learning.
Thank you very much, Tim. Now, we're going to introduce our second speaker for this afternoon, renowned specialist and consultant Philip Hines, on the topic, A Creative Approach to Learning and Teaching Spelling. Philip Hines is originally from England, but has been living in Mexico since 1995. He's an author and co-author of several ELT series published in Mexico, and speaks at ELT events all over Mexico, as well as internationally. Philip works as a senior academic consultant for Oxford University Press, Mexico. Welcome to the TDC, Philip.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Thank you for coming along to the session. I believe we have people from Peru and from Bolivia. If there's people from other places, I would love to know. Well, I'd love to know where you are. So let's get started with this particular session. The topic is spelling. I'm a big fan of spelling because I find it so difficult. I am dyslexic and I have to struggle with spelling. And what I want to share with you today, from Peru, Ricardo, is some ways that you can work with your students to help them develop their spelling, and maybe for yourself, because I'm sure there are words that we all have trouble with. Even people who are very good at spelling do struggle. Very good. Most people from Peru so far. Welcome to the session. Fantastic. Okay, so let's see if I can advance my slides. Let's just give me a sec, sorry. Yes. Good. So starting this session on spelling, I have here some words and they're all spelt incorrectly. And the question here is, where is the spelling mistake? You could type this in the chat, but I just want you to look at this really, because this idea of where the spelling mistake is, I think, is incredibly useful for us to help ourselves and our students to be able to correct their incorrect spelling. I'm going to give you the answer. Where are the incorrect spellings? Here I've highlighted it pretty much where the incorrect part is, and this is really important for us to correct student spelling. Let me ask you in the chat, do your students find spelling difficult? Can you tell me? We are dealing with English, which does have this very, very strange spelling and pronunciation correlation, not like Spanish. So do your students find spelling difficult? Hang on, I used to adjust my screen. Okay, got some yeses, some of them. Yeah, Ricardo says some of them. Yeah, some students don't have that problem, and fantastic if they don't, but you need to help the students that are having difficulty. When I was a kid, what my teachers would do is every time I wrote spelt a word incorrectly, they would make me write it out 10 times. It was a waste of time. There was no learning, there was no thinking, it was just copying. Yes, they have fossilized problems. Yes, you think that's the spelling and that's how you spell it, and you get that for the rest of your life. So let's look at this. In my research for this, I found a list of the most frequently, 100 most frequently misspelt words. This is one of many, many lists that you can find. This is a list which is of words which are misspelt by native speakers. That doesn't matter for this particular point, because I analyzed it and I identified where the mistakes were and what kind of mistakes there were. And oops. And I found out that you can really break down spelling mistakes into 4 different categories. You can you can make different subcategories of spelling mistakes if you want, but these 4 work for you. And analyzing it, I identified in this particular list what the most frequent were. The most frequent in this particular list, different lists will give you different variations. This one was that the omission of a letter was the most common. Then there was the mistake of an incorrect letter. For example, in catalog, it should be spelled with an A, but it's spelled with an E. So all the other letters are there, but one letter has just been transposed. Sometimes students put in an extra letter. And then there is the one where they have all the letters, but they're in the wrong order. Now, here's a pie chart. Let me put it in a different way. And you might be thinking, why is he taking it from a pie chart to a bar chart? Because I took 100 words, and now this is a piece of mathematics for you if you want. Are they right as they spell, Milagros? Of course. They write as they pronounce. That's such a logical thing to do. Doesn't unfortunately work in English. Does pretty much in Spanish, but not in English. But if students are doing that, at least they're going through a process. It's not necessarily going to work for them in all words, but it's okay. Yes, Manuel, you've mentioned here pronunciation. This is about spelling. Spelling and pronunciation are linked, but I'm dealing almost exclusively with spelling. And sometimes the pronunciation and spelling can help each other. Sometimes they can interfere with each other. Yeah. Oh, spelling is complicated. I completely agree. But here's a piece of if you're good at mathematics, we're English language teachers. Typically, we're not good at mathematics. I would like you to add up. If you add up those numbers, 11, 21, 22, and 52, what number do you get? Most English teachers don't like doing mathematics. We went into languages because we're better at languages. I wonder if somebody's going to write it in the chat. Maybe yes, maybe no. And there's a reason I ask you, because if you do add it up, it does give you some an interesting piece of information. I should give you the answer. Maybe somebody's typing the answer. What you get is 106, which indicates that of those 100 words, there is normally only one part of the word that is causing students problems. Brilliant. Yes, people have put down the numbers there. Yes. This is important. I asked you at the beginning to look at the words and think about where the spelling mistake is. You don't need to work on the whole word, typically. You should be working on the part of the word that students are having trouble with. And this is part of the point of this presentation, that identifying where the student has the problem, then you can apply a number of different strategies. Yes, the people are putting in the answers. And if you got it wrong, hey, you're an English teacher, you're not in mathematics. And English teachers typically don't really enjoy mathematics as far as I can see. So this leads me to the approach we're going to take. I've devised a system from moving from an incorrect spelling to a correct spelling, and I've got a 5-stage approach. The first thing you need to identify is that there is a mistake. Yeah. Like any problem in life, it's the same thing with Alcoholics Anonymous. The first step is identifying that you have a problem. If you don't identify that you have a problem with your spelling, you will spell it the same way for the rest of your life. So first of all, I know there is a mistake. And constantly in my life, as a bad speller, I'm constantly discovering new words that I didn't know I was spelling incorrectly. Spell check in Word and writing on computers does help a lot, because it does provide indications that there is a mistake and help to know what the correct word could be. The second stage is to identify where the mistake is, because it is not typically the whole word. And if you're trying to work on the whole word and not address the part which is causing the problems, you're making it more difficult for people. Then stage 3, sometimes knowing what kind of mistake it is can help you find the best solution. So is it an omission? Is it an extra letter? Is it the wrong order? or is it a substitution of a different letter? Knowing what kind of mistake can help you. The fourth stage is identifying a good strategy, and this is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be looking at a number of different strategies. Some of these you will know, some of these you will use, some of them will be new for you, and hopefully all of these you can show to your students. And the fifth stage is to apply the strategy. And if the strategy is good, you will never forget the spelling. If it's not good, it won't work, and you will have to go back to stage 4 or 3 or 2. So we were looking at these words to begin with. Welcome to the people who are joining the session. Good afternoon to everybody. Let me just check here. Very good. Okay. So these are the words that I have chosen. I'm going to use these 8 words to introduce you to 8 broad strategies, and actually more strategies than that. I think it's really important to the previous speaker was mentioning that we need to train our students, give them some kind of independence, and training students in strategies is one way to give them that independence. This is a tool you can use. It will help you. So let's start with this. And some of the, and if you know these things, great. If you want to comment in the chat, it's great. Please feel free to do that. The first strategy I want to show you is called words in words. And I came up first of all. Peace. If students don't know how to spell the word peace, as in pedazo, not as in paz, but in pedazo. If the problem is the I and the E, you can show them that we have the word pie, or if you like, pie. You can also cross languages to help you learn how one language. That's perfectly good, and I use that all the time. Yeah, and write the sentence, a piece of pie. If you know how to spell pie, that can help you spell peace. If you don't know how to spell pie, it's not going to help you. Yeah, that's really, really important. This is one that was taught to me as a dyslexic child. My teacher realized that I couldn't spell the word together. It was a bunch of letters, and I started with a T and all a big mess. And she came up to me and she wrote down on a piece of paper, she wrote the word together, but she wrote it in separately, to get her. So you can make a sentence. Making sentences and going actually one step further and making sentences and pictures can be very useful. Mary, you say pair words. Maybe you want to expand on that. Be interested to know what you're going to say there. Maybe students confuse the word here as in a key or a car, whatever what the difference is. I always forget with those. And to listen, to hear, to escuchar. If they know how to spell the word ear, that can help them spell the word ear. If they know how to spell the word here, it can help them spell the word ear. So we can do 2 things. It can help them spell either one of the words if they know the other one, or it can help them distinguish between well, like Mary was saying, pairs of words. I mean, we've got pairs of words here and here, spelt differently. One as in this place, and the other one, what you do with your ears. It can help them distinguish, because I know that's the case. For example, in Spanish, the word for cook and the word for sew, those really, really confuse me. Well, less so than in the past, but there are always words which confuse you in your second language. Some time ago, I was frustrated that I didn't know how to spell the word hiking. And you may be saying to yourself, but hiking's a really simple word. I mean, why do you not know that? I didn't. Different people have different problems. This was a word I didn't know how to spell. And I got so frustrated that I didn't know how to spell it. I said, okay, I need a strategy. And I looked at it and I go, oh, look, I can actually make the word hiking from 2 words, hi and king, 2 words I know how to spell. And that wasn't obvious until I went through that process. And then I was able to create a sentence, and I actually have an image. I actually have an image that associates that. So I've got a number of different levels. So some strategies do have different levels. And this is one I've added a lot more recently, the word course. Do Do your students ever misspell the word course? Maybe you can tell me yes or no. I typically write it. I transpose the S and the R. I turn them around, and it comes out wrong. I do it all the time, so I can now tell myself that there is the word hour. I know how to spell the word hour. I look for that in the word, and that's a strategy. And then again, I make a sentence. Yeah. So going that step further can be useful. Okay, so we've got lots of yeses for that. Yes. There's a subcategory of this, which is parts of words in words. If you're struggling with one part of the word, but you realize that it is a part of another word that you do know how to spell. If I don't know how to spell one of these words, if I don't know how to spell either of these words, it's not going to work. But I did use this to help me learn the word spelling, the spelling of the word squirrel, by realizing that it is the beginning of the word irrelevant. I don't know why squirrel is spelt like that. Doesn't help me. I don't think it should be spelt like that, but the truth is it is. Yeah. And the word thesaurus is not a very common word. A dictionary of synonyms and antonyms is a thesaurus. And this is one that was taught to me by a school friend lots of decades ago. A very, very clever guy, really good spelling. And he said, oh, I know how to spell the word thesaurus because it's like dinosaur. And I thought, what? And he showed me. And I thought, oh, that's brilliant. Unfortunately, I didn't know how to spell the word dinosaur until about 25 years later. So that strategy didn't work for me, but it did work for him. Yeah. But I've recently learned more recently I've learned how to spell the word dinosaur. But I think about the movie Cars, because there is an oil company which is called Dino. And that helps me remember the spelling of dinosaur. So I actually do use is it the Pixar movie Cars to help me remember how to spell the word dinosaur. Tell me if you've got examples of this kind of thing that you do. Please share them in the chat, not necessarily for me, but so that other people can see the processes that you use. And something very important, you may have strategies that help you spell a word which makes no sense to anybody, and that's not a problem. If it makes sense to you, that's absolutely brilliant. Yeah, the objective is that it helps you learn the spelling. If that strategy helps you, fantastic, objective completed. Does anybody else understand it? It's irrelevant. It's completely irrelevant if they understand it or not. Your objective is achieved. But the basic principle we've seen so far is it always has to relate to something that you have very clear in your mind. Okay, so let's move through. Let's work with this one. Tell me, have you ever seen your students spell the word with like this? Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. I say that, David, beau. Actually, I know it's the three vowels there, and beau. I actually say it like that. Oh, ice and eyes. Well, eyes is like ojo. You can even draw, like, I thought that was brilliant when I came across Spanish, the word ojo. You've got the J, which is the nose, and you've got the two O's, which are the eyes. You can actually do the same thing with eyes with the word eye, or eye, yeah? Oh, thorough and rough. English teacher, oh, those are horrific. I don't have very good strategies for that. Exactly. Okay, so let's look at this one. Now, this is perhaps one that most students are not going to accept. If you have a very spatial brain, a very spatial visual way of thinking, this works very well. Some of you are going to go, no, it doesn't work for me. It doesn't have to work for you. It is a possibility of a strategy, but for some students, it works very well. This one is the shape of the word. And here I've got the word with, which is spelled correctly. Beau, yes. With and with, spelled incorrectly. But I think practically every single learner of English goes through that stage at some point. Oh, how and who. Yeah. Yeah, if those two words are confused, you need to find a strategy to separate them. I don't necessarily have... muchas gracias, Ingrid. Do speak Spanish. Lived in Mexico for over half my life. Yeah. I would love to have you physically in the room so I could actually offer you suggestions of ways of separating them. So now this only works for about 5% of the class. It's only, and they may love it. They may go, oh, that's fantastic. Some of you, it's not going to work because you're not very spatial thinkers. And it seems to me that most people are not very spatial in their thinking. They may be very visual or auditory or kinesthetic, but spatial it seems to be a limited way of thinking. But yeah. So this may make sense. If it does, fantastic. If it doesn't, just ignore it as a principle. But let me give you, me and my, oh yes, Cheryl, yeah. Especially with the Spanish, because me is my in Spanish, blah, really, really confusing. Yes. Oh, Jesus. If you have a silent letter, saying the silent letter. So when you have hour, as in horario, or hora, say H hour or H hour in English or in Spanish for the time. Yeah. Now here's a little activity. I don't think if you want to put it in the chat, you can, but hopefully you can actually kind of do this on your own as we go through. Just check something here. Sorry. I have a very, very small laptop with a tiny screen, and it's very difficult for me to be able to see my slides and everything at the same time. But yes, so let me give you the first example. So you can see that this is that these different words have different shapes. You can try this. This is an activity I took directly from a book by Carol Reed. If you put this on the board, you gave this to your students. Some of them will go, yes, that makes sense to me. Many of them won't, but different people need different help. Beautiful gave me trouble at school. I used to omit the U. My Scottish teacher would pull my ear. Oh yes. Well, beau. One of the strategies I'm going to come to later is actually you say it as if it were Spanish. Beautiful. Yeah. Ah, brilliant. Cecilia's put it. Yes. Oh, which and which. Maybe the T in the middle of which, as in bruja, you could draw it to make it look like a witch so that you can actually visualize it like that. Yes, those are the answers. But there you go. So that is one thing. And actually, in preparation for this session, we're using StreamYard. And I've been using this for over a year now, and I never remember whether it's StreamYard or YardStream. I always have to go onto Google, type it in, and then it will correct me and tell me. And I got so frustrated. I said, how can I remember? And I used the shape of the word. Okay, I know it's written with 2 capital letters. I don't care how the company spells it. This is how I'm spelling it. And you can see that the shapes are quite different. And the one which is correct, I'll go back again, has a very different shape from the one that's incorrect. And now I can remember which is which. I can't just say it fluently. I have to think about the image, the shape, and then I can remember. So this can help you, again, if you've got words that are just are mixed up. For example, witch, as in the magic person, and which, as in cual. You could actually draw the shape, and that might work for some students. And as I said, most people are not predominantly spatial thinkers. If you're not very spatial, it doesn't really work. But why not show it to your students? And if 2 students in your class go, oh, thank you, teacher, that's fantastic, great. If the rest are going, don't understand, doesn't matter. Okay, let's move forward with this one. How are we doing for time? Okay. Some kind of logic. Okay, most people seem to spell the word business incorrectly at some point. I ask people, can you count from 1 to 2? Or I ask them, is it important to be able to count if you're in business? And I say, can you count from 1 to 2? And they say, yes, I can. I say, what comes first? 1. And there is the answer. If the problem is mixing up the number of S's, if you remember that it's 1 then 2, that is a strategy. This is why it's important to identify where the mistake is and what kind of mistake it is, because if that's not your problem, that's not the strategy you're going to use. I've been teaching English all this time, but I've never thought about the shape. David, are you a very visual, spatial? I mean, visual and spatial are slightly different things. Yeah. Give it a go. Well, this is why you came to my session, I hope. Conscious. If the problem are these letters, you know, omission of a letter or the wrong order. For me, it was the wrong order. Hopefully you can see what the logic is. The logic is that these are the word, this is the order that those letters come in the alphabet. Or if you say the 5 vowels, A, E, I, O, U, oh, there is the, I am conscious about that is the order of the letters. You can even make it into a sentence. Same thing with this, GHT, light, you know, the students mix those up because there's no logic to it whatsoever, it seems. Again, the shape of the letter, the shape of the word is a strategy you could use there. And in fact, the more strategies you throw at it, the stronger the learning will be. I hope it is interesting. Possible, position and possible. Used to mix these two up. So these are some strategies that I use to distinguish different words. One, I say to myself, I make a sentence, 1 position, 2 possibilities, and now I remember. So what I've done is I've identified there's a problem, identified where the problem is, what the problem is, and then applied a strategy, and now I never forget. But for years, I would be spelling it with 1 or 2 and never know, because I never attacked the word. Some people can just look at words and learn them. Fantastic. But even people like that do struggle with spelling. And this is the incorrect spelling again. Responses. I often have to write the word responses in my teaching, and I always spell it like this because this is how I think it should be spelt. But until I thought about it, noticed I was getting it wrong, thought about it, identified where the problem was, what the problem was, I then applied the strategy. And responses. I don't actually say to myself, but I have that idea. It's all S's. I think it should be spelt with a C, but the rest of the world doesn't. So therefore, I can choose to conform or be wrong, which is frustrating. How are we doing for time? Okay, good. 40. As far as I'm concerned, this is the spelling that the word 40 should have, but the world says differently. If you look historically, you will find examples of the word 40 spelt with a U. It seems to have died out about 200 years ago. It makes no sense to me why the word 40 is spelt with without a U, but that's the way it is. And one strategy I use is the number of letters. Okay, I'm going to ask you a question. And the question is, how many letters are there in your name? You can choose to think your first name or your full name or whatever. No? I know that I've got 3 names. There are 6 letters, 5 letters, 6 letters. Yeah? Oh, 50. Yes, it should be. It's frustrating, isn't it? I mean, literally it should be 50, but yes, that is wrong. Yeah. Do you know, the question is, do you know how many letters are in your name without counting, or do you have to count? So the question is, do you know how many letters are in your name? Yes or no? Essentially without counting. One of the best strategies as a native Spanish speaker is to remember how to pronounce exactly that. David, that's something we're going to come with. That's my last strategy and my favorite. Yes. I've also found the misspelling of 15. Cecilia, you know. Okay, if you have to count, that means that you don't naturally look at the number of letters. Jorge, I've got to count, because that's not, you don't think kind of numerically. I often look at a word. I can tell you, I don't remember the word, but it starts with the letter J and it's got 7 letters. I can tell you that. Yeah. Some people use the number of letters to help them remember. And this is maybe a little bit abstract. I often count the number of letters. That helps me. Ingrid, you have to count. Then that's probably not the strategy that's going to come to you. But you can ask your students if they know. Ooh. Mark, that's maybe another strategy that I'm not familiar with. You don't know. Yeah. Some people do count letters in words. I do. And okay, I don't know if this makes sense to you. I'll explain it to you. 45, not 46. To help myself remember that there are only 5 letters in the word 40 and not 6 as I want it to be spelt, I use this phrase 45, not 46. So I don't know if you fully understand that, but you can ask your students, how many letters do you have in your name? If they have to count, maybe that's not the strategy for them. Yeah. Here we go. This is my favorite category. This is not the one I use most because it is perhaps the most difficult to find solutions for. But this is something about the way it looks. Okay. I'm gonna give you, yes, knowing whether there are 2 L's in the middle of parallel or just one, do you know the strategy? I just want to see if anybody knows this. I'm sure some people know this, and I'm also pretty sure that some of you have never noticed this. But these are beautiful things that you can show to your students. English does this, but sometimes the spelling can be changed over time. Oh, it's spelling reforms. Oh, it's so interesting. So does anybody know? Oh, let me show it to you. Look, stop the suspense. Have you noticed? Suzanne Vega. Sorry, I can't not notice a brilliant singer from the 1980s. You share the same name, unless you are the singer. I don't suppose you are. Did you notice that there are parallel lines in the word parallel? If students are having trouble knowing whether there is 1 in the middle or it's double at the end, etc., 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 yes, exactly. Yeah, Henry, you're stating it in a different way, but it's exactly the same idea. Yeah. So, you can draw the word parallel. If people are spelling it incorrectly, write it on the board and make the 2 L's into parallel lines, and they'll go, boom, and never, ever forget. So this does depend on creativity and your ability to find connections. But let's just look at this. If students, there's the word balón in Spanish with 1 L and 1 O. If they're having trouble with the number of letters, you can actually draw the string from the O's through the L's to be the strings that hold the balloons. Hopefully that is clear. The word bed looks like a bed. Maybe you've noticed. Yeah, and people are writing things, different ways you're looking at it. Yeah, they may be different from the thing I'm showing you, but if it's the way that works well for you, great. Yeah, and my suggestion is that we can maybe show these to students. I have big troubles with B's and D's. I will reverse them. I never know which is which. And I go back to this. My teacher, seeing me spell the word dog incorrectly, she wrote the word dog on a piece of paper and she turned it into a dog, which helped me realize that the D faces out of the word and not into the word. And that is what I do. That's what I've been doing for the last 45 years. Every time I have a BD moment, and I'm never sure which is which. Here we go, more things. So extension cable. When you have this in mind, that's the point, Ingrid. Once you've gone through that process, you found a connection, you never forget. So you've gone through so many years of your life spelling it incorrectly, apply the strategy and it works. Extension cable. As far as I'm concerned, it should be spelled like that, but for some reason, the rest of the world spell it differently. And what I do, my problem is the T, which should be an S. So what I do is I draw, in my mind, I draw the S as an extension cable. Hopefully that makes sense. The word visible, I think it should be spelled like that, but the rest of the world spells it differently. I'm going to have to go through quite quickly. I can't ask you to supply all the answers to these. This is the word ojo. I learned the word ojo for eye so early on because people would draw it as a nose and the 2 dots. And it's just such a visual thing. That's Mark. You've got a kind of another strategy there, making relations to other words which have the same pattern. Yes, and you could make it into a sentence. I got an extension for my pension after my suspension, or whatever. No, you can change things like that. Yes. Okay. And this one, desert and dessert. Okay, there's the spelling difference. There's the stress on the first syllable or the second syllable. I'm not looking at the pronunciation. It is a slightly different category. But which one has got the single S? Which one's got the double S? I take the S's. I turn the first one into a snake, and I think about a snake going through the desert. And for a dessert, I think about a nice little cake, tiny little cupcake as a dessert. With some fancy icing, just simple, quite fancy icing on it. So I take the S's and I create these images. Yeah, things you can do. No, so I mean, maybe you can show some of these to your students if they have those mistakes. Maybe you can share some that you've done. Maybe you can ask them to share some with others. And yeah, it took me a long time to produce those slides, but anyway. So let's go through before I run out of time. Yeah, good. Tomorrow, word pictures. Yes, exactly. I mean, I've got different names for these strategies. You give your own names. There's no correct approach. The thing is, does it work for you? Fantastic. I've learnt it desert because you want seconds. Ah, Mark, fantastic. Stealing that from you. Sorry, Mark, that did belong to you. It now belongs to me as well. Same objective, different approach. Ta-da. Yes. Brilliant. Good. Yeah. And the more you see, the more strategies you find, the easier it is to apply them to different situations. This is another one. If you know how to spell one of these words, you can help spell other words. For example, now this is really important. If the words rhyme and spell with the same pattern, great. If the spelling or the rhyme or the pronunciation is different, it will not work. You would confuse people. But tomorrow, borrow, sorrow. Yeah. You can also make a sentence. I wonder if anybody wants to make a sentence. Yeah. And that's kind of another stage of the strategy. I remember being in primary school, not knowing how to spell these words, and then realizing one day that should, could, and would have the same pattern. Ta-da, never forgot, but only once I've gone through that process. If students are struggling with one of these words, but they know how to spell, well, they know how to spell at least one of them, they can use it to spell the other ones. Yeah, we've got to make sure that pronunciation and spelling are related but separate, and these strategies are mostly non-pronunciation, pretty much except for this one. Yeah. Well then, yeah, bought, brought, caught. That could confuse because they don't have the same pattern. If that works for you, great, but you might confuse students. Do you have any written work on the interest? No, this is pretty much the things that I've discovered and found. I haven't got a specific source. I've collected things from different places and I've gone through and made this from myself. Yeah, because I wasn't satisfied with what I found. Okay, weight, freight. If students can't spell the word weight, but they can spell the word 8, they can use that, or it's words, it's word in words, essentially. Yeah. This one's pretty simple. Catalog. Okay, here I'm using the British spelling. My own preference is the American spelling. I spell it without the U and the E. I live in Mexico, next to the United States. This is what I like to do. I'm going to give you my email address. It's on my last slide. So I hopefully they'll show you the last slide, and I'm quite happy to share this with you. Yeah. Pictures. Okay. A catalog. I work for a publisher. We use catalogs. I would always spell catalog with an E because I thought that's what it was. Moment of frustration. What can I do? And I'm actually combining different strategies here. So I say to myself, a cat, and I think about the word cat and a picture of a cat and a log. And I say this to myself and I remember, no, it's not C-A-T-E, it is C-A-T-A. Does that make sense to you? Oh, Cecilia. Strategy for this one, knight. In the night, it's dark, but the knight came at night. If you got silent letters, say the silent letters. Yeah, and so here I'm using the American spelling because I prefer it. I am British, but I live in the Americas, so I prefer the American. And this is the set of strategies that I use most. How much time do we have? Okay, good. Say it as it sounds. Now, some people have already mentioned this. Cecilia just gave me an idea. Some people have said this before. This, for me, is the best strategy. And knowing Spanish has helped me learn how to spell English words. So this is the easiest for me to implement. And I see students implement this strategy, but sometimes they feel bad because they think it's wrong. So, in fact, this is partly my brother teaching this to me. He has no trouble spelling, but he showed me that he uses this strategy. Friend, it's got 6 letters, I can tell you that. Maybe you're not aware of that. I do count letters kind of subconsciously. Fry end. My brother taught me to say fry end. So there's actually word in word, but he said, say it as if it were, as it was spelt. Exactly. Dialogue. One's British, one is American. For different historical reasons, go and investigate. And I think in Spanish, you wouldn't say friend, you would say friend. Say it as you want. The objective is that you never forget. If you don't know which order the I and the E go in, that works for you. What is the best day to have your wedding? The best day to have your wedding, or the best day to get wed, is on Wednesday. Yeah. I actually, no, Mark, no. I before E except after C. Well, if I want to spell the word Schneider, your surname doesn't follow that rule, unfortunately. And the most common word in English, which has an I and an E together, is the word there, the possessive. And it doesn't follow that rule. So I before E except before C is not a solid rule. Yeah, sometimes. Yes. Well, yes, exactly. German. I mean, there is a Germanic root word. It comes in, I think, from Scandinavia, from the Vikings, I think. Yeah, there we go. So what is the best day to have your wedding? Wednesday. And I actually break it down into 3, 3, and 3. Wednesday. Mary, I think somebody was mentioning night. If you have a silent letter, say the silent letter to help you remember. So do you know? Do you have the knowledge? Did you hurt your knees? Yes. And I learned this one from my brother, and also an example in Spanish, like the word zanahoria. I was taught to say zana h oria. And this is perhaps very Mexican. There is a colonia in Mexico City where our office used to be, which was Colonia Cuauhtemoc, and that just drove me crazy. How do you spell it? And my strategy was Cuauhtemoc. So say the silent letter. Yes, some students say that way. But then you've got to teach the pronunciation. No. But to help you remember the spelling as a private internal thing, cano. Yeah, these things need to be, you can't, if you've got spelling and pronunciation completely together, you've got to separate them out a little bit. Available, available. Spanish speakers will say it differently. I don't really care how you say it. That's how I say it. I've resolved my problems. Spelling bees drive me crazy. If you put me in a spelling bee and said available, I wouldn't be able to spell it to you. But you asked me to type it, I can type it. Available. Ta-da. So hopefully I'm being clear. Vorherigen, Hate the word for I before E except after I before E doesn't work. Yeah, it's not a good rule. What I use is I say it as if it were a Spanish word, foregan. How you would say it depends on your accent, depends how you want to say it, but it's saying it like that. Oh, and this is one of my favorite ones. And I've seen students do this. And it's like, how do you spell the word medir in English? And the other student says to their friend, measure. And I want to ask you, have you ever heard a student say measure to remember the spelling? Or have you ever said the word as if it were a Spanish word to help you? I would love to know. So measure. And again, you put me in a spelling bee and they say the word is measure. I don't know how to spell it. But you can also apply, well, I've already applied one strategy. It works for me. Measure is the spelling. There you go. I know how to spell it. I can type it, no problems. I could break it down. Me assure. Gabriella, is that a word that you apply that strategy to? Yeah, it's a really powerful strategy, and I encourage you to teach it to your students. It kind of goes against the way we should be working. We shouldn't mix English and Spanish, but students do. Does it work? Does it resolve your problem? But we do have to make sure that we're not getting into the trap of students pronouncing the words always like that. It's a strategy to help you remember the spelling. But if students are saying can know and can knowledge in their speaking activities, that's wrong. We need to correct, stop the fossilization. But I'm sure they've got the spelling right. Okay. Definitely. This is the word, one of the words I gave at the beginning. The second I always spell as an A. I think it makes sense to me. But what I do is I say it as if it were a Spanish word, definitely. Yes, and I did this with some teachers, and one of the teachers was dyslexic, and she had the same problem, and she did this. When she got to the second I, she said, definitely. And I thought it was brilliant. I mean, she's not going to forget that. Students confuse American and British spellings. Yeah, I personally, I actually prefer some American spellings and some British spellings, and I use both in my writing, unless I'm writing for a specific audience. Do it backwards, sure. Oh yes, that is another strategy. Yeah, not everybody maybe understands what Andrea is talking about, but yes, it is a strategy. Do you use it for yourself? Does it work? If it does work, fantastic. So how are we doing for time? Good. Okay, so these are the words we were looking at. I use these to introduce a number of strategies. There are several strategies there. I just want to go back through the 5-stage program. Alcoholics Anonymous, I think, have 12 stages in their program. I have 5 stages in my program, from moving from incorrect to correct. Brilliant. Gabriella, stomachache, stomachache. Stomachache. Brilliant. So I think it's separated in the space between stomach and ache. Exactly. So let's go through. First thing you need to know is that there is a mistake. If you don't know there's a mistake, you're lost. Yeah. Second one, identify where the mistake is. It's not the whole word typically. It's normally one, sometimes 2 parts of the words that are causing problems. Once you've identified that, sometimes it's very good to know what kind of the mistake it is, because that can help you find the best strategy. You need to find a good strategy. So I've given you a bunch of strategies, and you've been sharing in the chat some strategies of your own with each other, and then apply the strategy. So just to wrap up this before we move to questions, maybe somebody could share my email in the chat. If one of my colleagues is there, maybe my colleagues could share my email in the chat. If anybody wants to contact me once the presentation, I'm very happy to share it with you. Yes, this presentation is designed for teachers, but I think you as teachers should share some of these ideas with your students. Yes. So these are my conclusions. 5 conclusions here. Strategy, if you're going to apply the strategy, it must relate to something you know well. If it doesn't relate to something you know well, you're not going to find the connection. Second one, each strategy is personal. It's for you. Yeah. And this relates to number 3. It doesn't need to make sense to anyone else. Sometimes people have explained strategies to me for spelling a particular word, and I go like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But the question is, does it work for you? Yes. Nobody else needs to understand it. Yeah. Yes, I will be opening up for questions in a minute. Try the strategy. If it doesn't work, yes. If it doesn't work, apply another strategy. And I don't know who said this, but this is one of the things that I really like. The best strategy is a mixed strategy. I will sometimes apply several strategies to the same words. So this leads us to, I think we have 5, maybe up to 10 minutes for questions, depending when I'm interrupted. Let's see if I can do this. Oh, by the way, on the screen here, we have a barcode. So that if you want to take a shot of that, because that takes you to a questionnaire. Oh, let me go back. There was a question. There was a question. There was a question here. But what can we do to make student spelling correct without mispronouncing words? Yanali, that's correct pronunciation. Hidalgo. Give them good models and practice of the pronunciation. So like no. But if you find students are spelling it incorrectly, you can say, okay, just for your own internal memory, say cano. Yeah. It does need to be kind of an internal thing. Rosa, wash hands. I don't know what you mean. Okay. Yes, La Libreria from Bolivia put that up there, put up the link. So that's there as well. Maybe there are questions, maybe there are not. I'm going to be here until I'm interrupted, which I've got a few minutes. I'm very happy to also, via email, have little mini discussions about how you might attack a particular word. I like this strategy, but I feel like playing and students, but I feel like playing and students will love it. I mean, anything that makes, play is an inherently fun thing. If students feel like it's playing, it's rich. My suggestion really is to offer some of these things to your students. And if they like them, great. You may actually become a teacher that they remember for the rest of their life because, it was Oscar, it was Claudia, it was Christian who taught me, the last people to write their names, Ingrid, who taught me this, and you remember because it was an important moment. Yeah, and somebody asked me earlier about sources. I don't really have any sources. Oh, here they come up. Okay. Is this strategy unique? Do you have any books or somewhere where you can find examples? Not really. These are things that I have collected together. I've seen books. There was a book I was going to buy and I didn't. But these are things that I've put into practice. This comes from being dyslexic, and I've shown these to things, and I think it's fun. I think these things can be quite fun. Is this strategy more difficult for non-Spanish speakers? The say it as it sounds was offered to me via English speakers, my brother, and Spanish speakers. If you come from a phonetic background like Spanish, which is pretty much spelt as it's said as it's spelt, it can be beautiful to remember spelling of difficult words. Jeopardy. Give it a go. Yeah. I'm thinking pretty much these are just like, okay, here's a word that people are misspelling. You put it on the board, you put it on the screen, and you go, hey, look at this, try this. And what happens is that 2 or 3 students in the class go, oh, you know? Yeah. Oh, let me just, can I just change my slide? That is my email address in case anybody wants to contact me. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Philip. Amazing information and tips. We really appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
Now, it's our final session of the TDC 2021 Cusco edition. And so now, a big welcome to Pearson Education. Pearson is one of the world's leading learning companies, and to find out a little bit more about our friends at Pearson and what they do, let's watch this video together. Let's go, team.
The real goal of learning isn't knowledge, it's change. When we learn, we create new pathways, new circumstances, new futures for ourselves and for others. Pearson is the world's leading learning company, but what we really make, the thing we are most proud of, is change. For over 50 years, we have been transforming lives through education, helping tens of millions of people all over the world reach their full potential. And yet we are lifelong learners ourselves, forever evolving to meet the moment. With our history to ground us and our creativity to inspire us, we're reinventing everything we do, from paper to pixels, from physical to virtual. We're making learning more personal, more equitable, more powerful. There has never been a better time to learn, and we are. We are the change we believe in. We are learning.
Thank you, Tim. Next, we're going to present our last speaker of the afternoon, the renowned consultant Ken Beatty, with the topic 17 Ways to Assess When They Work and Why They Work. Anaheim University TESOL professor has worked in Asia, the Middle East, North and South America, lecturing on language teaching and computer-assisted language learning from the primary through university levels. He's an author and co-author of 142 textbooks and has given 500 plus teaching training sessions and conferences in 35 countries. Welcome to TDC, Ken.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And great to be here. And thank you, everybody, for sticking around. I think you probably had a long day of sessions already. And so I'm going to try to make this as enjoyable and engaging as I can for you. So we're going to be talking about assessment. And I think if I can get into here. There we are. Okay, so we're going to be seeing my screen there. All right. So we're going to be talking about assessment. And your first question is going to be, what's with the pumpkins? All right, I'm Canadian. I live in Montreal, Canada, and it's pumpkin season. And for me, pumpkins are just, something that tells me that it's autumn here. I know that it's spring in Peru right now, but it's autumn in Montreal, and the snow is coming soon. So the pumpkins are the last bright reminders of the autumn. And of course, it's a Latin American thing. There were no pumpkins in Europe or Asia until explorers crossed the world and visited. And so it's kind of a very Latin American thing. So lots of pumpkin pictures today. Also, of course, Halloween's coming up tomorrow, and uses pumpkins a lot. Let's begin. Okay, so I'll just try to get now it's a question of how I can forward my slides. Okay. This is always the one with technology. Okay. Okay, I have my controls, but they're not working. Okay, I'm sorry, terribly sorry, but I seem to have my slide up, but now I can't move it forward or backwards. Let's see. Can somebody technical give me some help here? I'm going over to the private chat. Go to the PowerPoint again. Right, and play forward. Okay. So, share. I think, Ellie, you're going to have to present this because I'll try sharing again. Share screen. Slideshow. Okay, all right, so that seems to be seeing. I'll need some audio here. Can you see this? Can you see the bus? Somebody has to tell me audio. I can't see the... Ellie, can you tell me? Sorry, I need somebody to tell me or send me a quick email. I apologize to everybody. It's always the case with technology, getting a new word here. So let's see. Can one of the supervisors or organizers please let me know? Can you see the slide? Not getting any feedback here. Oh, man. We see a bus. Okay, all right. Okay, let me go back then. Okay, let's try again. Okay, so I'm assuming you can see the bus. Okay, so let's work with this. Okay, so we're going to start off with a listening test. A listening test. What? A test already? Okay, it's very, very simple listening test. And all you need to do is to listen. So I'm going to read something. It's a listening test, and then you have to answer one question, just one question afterwards. Okay, so this is it. You're driving a yellow school bus with 45 seats, but only the driver and 13 students are on the bus at the moment. The bus has 4 wheels and 19 side windows, 1 window in the front, 4 in the back, and 3 windows on the door. Without the driver on board, the bus weighs 12.5 tons. Okay, I hope you have all that information. Here's the question. What is the name of the driver? What? Okay, some of you are probably putting some ideas up into the chat right now and trying to figure this out. Let's look at the question again. You're driving a yellow school bus with 45 seats, but only the driver. What? Oh, you're the driver. You're the driver. So the answer to the question is your name, whatever your name is. Okay, stupid test, yeah? What are the challenges? There's many, many challenges, but surprisingly, this is typical of many bad tests that we see. First of all, the students are unsure of what to listen to or what to read in many cases in other tests. They're not really sure. They're presented with a lot of information, and in fact, there's too much information. That's the second one, which is background noise. Background noise is what we call extra information that's not important. It interferes because I'm telling you all about windows and doors and wheels and everything else. You're thinking, I thought the question would be about the color of the bus or something. And most of you probably were predicting what the question would be. The assessment essentially tricks students. It's not what they expect. They're paying attention. Some of you may even have been writing down some of the details as I was saying them, but it's not what teachers expect or students expect. So it's kind of a trick thing. And finally, the content, the questions, and the answers are not important. Who cares? Who cares what the name of the driver is, really? That's not really what it's testing. It's just trying to trick students. So this seems like a joke in some kind, but actually when you look at a lot of tests that are given to students, they are often unsure of what to listen to or to read. They are often too much information in the questions or in what they have to read to get to the questions. The assessment often tries to trick students. I've heard teachers who are delight in this, who think, oh yes, I wrote a very tricky exam. Nobody will pass. And I think, what is the purpose of that? And finally, we're sometimes testing on content and questions and answers that, the students don't think are important. And really, the question is really, is it important to communication? Is it helping their skills? And also, will they use it after they graduate if they're going on to university or if they're going on to a career? Are they really going to use this kind of information? If the answer is no and no, then why are you doing it? So why do we assess? Why do we assess? Well, there are 3 kinds of assessment, really. The first one is formative. And formative assessment is to give feedback to help students improve. I'm going to come back to formative several times in today's presentation because we should do more of it. Teachers tend to give tests and then take the marks, give tests, take the marks. Instead, we should be giving tests and just letting students understand what the answers are, and then they can basically use that to improve. The second kind is summative assessments, and this is used to make decisions about students' abilities and paths. For example, when they graduate, when they're ready to graduate, when they're ready to go on to the next level, when we can certify them as able to do something. So for that, we need to take the marks, and we need to really understand that quite clearly. And the third one is illuminative, which most people haven't heard about, but it's just simply to enlighten the teacher and or the students about classroom issues. A very simple illuminative test is something I might say, I might write a test, and with one question, what is the most important thing you learned in this course this semester? Or, maybe what did you learn today? What was the most important thing you learned today? Or what do you think was the least important thing you had to learn today? In these cases, really, I'm not going to take marks, but it's a kind of assessment that the student is giving feedback, and I'm using that feedback to improve my own teaching and my own course design. In fact, information gathering, assessment is often used for information gathering, and it's really used for 4 reasons. The first one is curriculum development. So we give students a test. If we find that most students are having a lot of problems with particular things, we should build that into our curriculum, build extra time into the curriculum for doing that. For lesson planning, it's just the same as curriculum development. If we give students tests and we find out, oh, they didn't understand it, but I taught this last week, why don't they understand? I have to rethink my lesson planning and maybe teach in some other way. Another big one is error treatment. Now I want to stop here and just explain there's a big difference between mistakes and errors. Mistakes are things that we make all the time just because we're a little bit tired or we aren't thinking or we're just confused for a moment and we say the wrong thing. As native English speakers, as native Spanish speakers, we do this all the time. Everyone does make little mistakes. You don't have to, as a teacher, jump on that and say, oh, you made a mistake, all the time. If you think the student knows that they're making the mistakes. An error, though, is different. An error is when the student doesn't know they're making a mistake and they keep making that same mistake. So an error is something that we really have to intervene. We have to have an intervention and talk to the students and try to improve in some way. And finally, evaluating the classroom tasks that we do. So we try teaching in certain ways. Maybe say, okay, well, today we're going to play a language game. Afterwards, I give them a quick little spot test, and we'll talk about spot tests later. Give them a quick little spot test just to see what their knowledge is after the game. Actually, did they learn more from playing the game about the target vocabulary, the grammar, the usage? Or, was it better to go back to the traditional lessons instead? So it can help us in our evaluation of different kinds of classroom tasks. So assessment has many purposes, right? So what should we assess? Well, there's really components of language, and really all our assessment is about these 5 points. Phonology is the sounds of the language. Are you pronouncing things correctly? If you speak another language in your learning, quite often you have an accent. I think that's beautiful. When I was talking to Ellie, one of the organizers who's helping me this week, and she speaks great English. There's no problem with comprehension whatsoever, none. But she still has some Spanish accent. And I said to my wife after, I said, "Oh, it's so romantic." and so we shouldn't actually discourage accents. It really is part of our identity. And we all have them. I have a Canadian accent because I live in Canada. Morphology is the meaning of words, and that's things like prefixes and suffixes and root words. So I've got prefixes like re or on. I've got suffixes like ology. We can see it here, and they have particular meaning. So with the meaning of words, lexicon of the words themselves, grammar or syntax is the word order. Why do we put them in a different word order? And why do we talk about things happening at different points of time, which is a big function of grammar? And discourse, discourse is really the intent. What's the purpose of the language? You can say things many, many different ways, and it changes the meaning. And that's where we start to examine what is the intent. I can say, thank you. That sounds great. How polite, right? Or I could say, thank you, and that sounds sarcastic. Like, why are you doing that? All of a sudden, the intent has changed. So we start to examine the discourse, not just of individual words and phrases, but we also understand the discourse of what's the difference between a blog post and an essay, or a blog post and a newspaper article. What are the differences, and how do they accomplish things? How does a story, differ from a blog post or an essay? What are the features of it that are particular? What's the discourse of a joke, right? So it all has different things. So really, these are the things that we try to assess. Now, what do we assess? That's what we should assess. But what do we assess? What do we assess? Well, this is a little less clear. We do a lot of focus on memorizing rules and formulaic speech. We teach them long lists of vocabulary that they may or may not use. We teach them a lot of grammar rules, like to form the past perfect tense, you use the past tense of the verb to have, which is had, and add it to the past participle of the main verb. For example, subject plus had plus past participle equals the past perfect tense. Had you studied? Yes, I had studied. It's like, okay, first of all, who remembers these rules? Nobody. Even English teachers have to look them up from time to time. Who uses language like this? Had you studied? Yes, I had studied. Well, actually, everyone uses it, because grammatically, it accomplishes something that you don't have just in the simple past. Did you study? Yes, I studied. Is a little bit different than had you studied. Had you studied usually comes with when you did something else, like before the test. So there was something there. We should instead focus on concepts. So instead of going through those long rules, we can say concept questions like, why do we need a past perfect tense? And even you could make it simpler. Say, how would you talk about something that happened in the past that's already over? It's already completed. How do you do that? And let the students solve the problem in some way. That's much more interesting. So focusing on concepts, because students can remember concepts far easier than they remember rules. We often assess in ways that are easy to mark, and that's why we have so many multiple choice tests. You can't get away from them. You can't avoid them. Always going to have multiple choice tests. But multiple choice tests are not about communication. And our jobs as teachers of language is really to improve students' communication skills. Nobody ever stops you on the street and says, oh, excuse me. I need to go swimming. I wanted to go swimming. Do you know where there's A library, B, a cafeteria, C, a swimming pool? Nobody says that. Nobody gives you these multiple choice questions on the street. It's not a real communication sort of thing. So why do we have them? They're easy to mark. What's different now? And what has to change? It's a big question. So in 1996, students are changing. In 1996 was the first time the phrase digital natives was used. It was a year before my children were born. My first son was born. And so I was very, very conscious of this idea. And actually, this is a little painting my wife did for a magazine. And it was all about children being born with mobile phones. And it kind of feels that way now. Our students are digital natives. They've grown up with technology and they're really comfortable with it. And they actually want certain aspects of technology to be in their assessments as well. They're used to playing computer games where you play, you fail, everything explodes, you die, and then you start over again, right? And that's their mentality, is like, well, why can't I just start over again if I fail a test? Students increasingly have higher expectations of their teachers and their educations. They expect to pass tests. And if they don't pass a test, it's never their fault. It's always the teacher's fault, right? You already know this. Okay, so assessment stakeholders and all have different concerns. Students are just one of them. There's what do students want? What do parents want from assessment? They want to know that their kids are doing well or doing as well as everyone else or doing better than everyone else. Administrators want to understand that students are learning, from the, because they hire teachers, and so they want to make sure that the teachers are doing their job. University committees or school committees basically want to make sure that there are standards being met and that the students will be able to go on, especially to employment, and employers want to know that the assessments will show that a student can communicate. If you have an employer working in a company, he wants to look at the student records and say, this student is an A student, a top student in English. We'll hire her, and then they find out they aren't. Then there's a problem with the assessments, right? Teachers want a lot of things. They want a lot of things. Of course, they want to understand how students, how well students are doing, but they also want the students to know how well they're doing as well, and they want to improve again all of those things about their curriculum, their lesson plans, and their tasks. Publishers are also extremely interested in assessment, and publishers. Most of the big publishers, don't just create textbooks, they also create assessment packages of different kinds. It's because they realize that they have to work tightly together, and they're always trying to say, do students taking this course or using these books, can they pass these tests? And they want to try to improve the course and improve the test at the same time. Can assessment work against learning? Well, sometimes. Traditional teaching actually is quite different than how we learn things on our own. In traditional teaching in a traditional classroom, what happens? A teacher offers limited resources, usually the teacher talking and a textbook. There's surface exploration. Okay, we finished week 1. Turn to the next unit, right? So it's very superficial. Learning is the focus, and it's always being measured through assessment. And then testing grades the students. What do I mean grades? I don't mean, A, B, C. Grades means it separates the students into students able to do things and students not able to do things. That's quite different than, for example, when you learn something on your own. When you learn something on your own, you explore it, but you have almost unlimited resources. So, if I want to learn French, which is what I'm doing right now, I look on YouTube, I have little apps, I look at this, I pick up books, I can, talk to people in the street, I can ask my wife who speaks French. So I've got a lot of unlimited resources, not just what's inside a classroom. Deep exploration is very, very common. And for me, learning French, I want to learn very personal things. I want to learn to talk about myself. How, I'm a teacher, I'm a father, I'm a cook. I like, teaching, everything, all the things that I do. I need to be able to express those things. Self-assessment is reflective. I keep measuring myself. How well am I doing? Can I do something? And this morning, I went to a grocery store, and in French, the person said, can you just leave the cart right there, the shopping cart? And I didn't understand what he said. And I stopped afterwards. I brought my groceries. Then I said, excuse me, can I just ask you again, how do you say that in French? So again, I turn problems into learning opportunities. So it's kind of interesting. We need to combine these much more. And we need to combine the traditional teaching approaches to what students can do on their own. Because, just being in class for 20 or 30 hours a week isn't enough. So there's 3 trends that we see now. One of them is opportunities to show what you know. So usually a test is made up this way. I teach you for a semester. I've covered 4 units or 10 units, and then I say, okay, I'm going to give you a test, and I'm going to take something from the 10 units. And you say, what are you going to take? No, it's a secret. I'm not telling you. It's not really giving students a chance to show what they know. A better chance is to say, okay, these were 3 situations in which you had to talk this semester. How could you communicate about that? Write a dialogue or something, something that allows the students to show how they know. Because often we can get what we want in many, many linguistic ways. There's lots of different words, combinations, ways we can express ourselves to get what we want. A second point is moving from competition to collaboration. Why? Because speaking a language is not a competitive event. You're not always trying to beat someone else when you have a conversation. You're cooperating together. And most of our students will go into jobs where they are working with other people and they need to communicate. So why not make the classroom activities more about working together and using the language rather than just everybody do their own work? and a lot more personal and local assessment. So the personal I talked about already, that's personal for me. What's the language that I need to learn and that I want to learn? And local assessment is, how can I talk about things around me? How can I talk about, Montreal, where I live, and the things that interest me? We have to ask the right questions, and closed-ended questions are too limiting. You can't get away from them altogether. But a question like, what is the capital of Peru, is a typical old question that teachers ask, and it's boring. What happens? Everybody knows, but only one student puts up their hand and says, it's Lima, right? What's a better question? A better question is to say, why is Lima the capital of Peru? Suddenly, everybody can have an opinion. Oh, it's historical. Oh, it has to do with the water, the ships, or the harbor. Is there a river there? Something like that. They'll have many, many different ideas like that. Okay, we have to position students to solve language problems together. And we do that not by having individual work, but by having small groups and pairs, small groups and large groups. A lot more focus on using different skills of the same, reading and writing, listening and speaking. Reading, writing, listening, and speaking all together is a great task. We have a lot of inauthentic materials, and we have completely authentic materials. Somewhere in the middle are constructed materials. For example, if you have a restaurant menu, you can take a real one, but maybe it's got unusual names, so you change a few of them. That's constructed. And strategies. Students need a lot of strategies to help them communicate. So we have to work on that and improve the opportunities for students to use strategies when they're talking. Strategies are lifetime problem-solving things. Okay, personalization. We no longer want every student to learn the same thing. Learners want variation based on their own needs and interests. One question to ask is, will your students fly space shuttles or drive cars? Okay, maybe one of your students will be an astronaut, but most of them are just going to drive a car. Why do I ask this? Well, for a space shuttle, that's kind of like a norm referenced assessment, and they compare all the learners to each other. We want to know who is the best of the best, and that's why we do comparative bell curve, try to measure students against each other. But when you learn a language, it's much more criterion referenced. When you pass a driver's test, they tell you what you have to do. You have a list of things. As long as you can do them, you don't have to be the best driver in the world, but you get a driver's license, right? So it's a set of standards that are clear to the students, clear to everybody else. And of course, like language, the longer you drive a car, the better you become. So it's kind of, it kind of makes sense. All right, move from traditional to alternative assessments. Traditional assessments tend to be one shot. Alternative, measure, assess all the time, continuously assess, but maybe give more formative feedback. Indirect, directly on what the students are doing. Inauthentic, more group work, more feedback to students, especially after a test. Untimed, give students time to do a test, and personalize the topics and say, okay, take the test home, do it at home. Oh, but what if the students talk to each other? Just give every student a slightly different topic. Say, okay, I want you each to choose a different country in the world and talk about their favorite food. And everybody does that, right? And they all have to tell each other which country they're choosing. So they're all going to be doing something slightly different. Who cares? They'll take more time. Contextualized, more criterion referenced, and classroom-based assessment rather than just standardized tests. Okay, and also make your expectations clear. Make your expectations very, very clear to the students of what you want them to do. One way that I do this with my own students, and I work with graduate students and doctoral students, but I give them examples of last semester students. I say, oh, here's an example. I take the student name off, but I give them examples of what previous students have done. And that helps them to understand. That helps them to understand what is expected. I don't have to write it all out in great detail. They can just see good examples of what was done before. And of course, I expect them to do better. Okay, 17 ways to test. This is what I promised you. I'm going to give you 17 different ways. Enough talking about around the edges. Here's some different ways to test and why each one works. I'm going to use a couple of examples from a textbook series called Startup. It's for adults and young adults, but But don't worry, if you're teaching primary school students or teenagers or anybody, if you're teaching chimpanzees, it doesn't matter. It's still going to be the same principles. Okay, so let's go. The first one is this strange name. You might have seen it in the abstract, ipstative, and nobody knows what ipstative means. It's a very simple concept. It just means comparing two things. So you just want students to make those comparisons themselves or choose between better and worse. A Likert scale, like at the bottom, is a very typical ipsative test. Anyway, so what do you do? Ask students to do something like record something at the beginning of the semester and then record it at the end. And then look at the recordings. Ask them to write a paragraph on a topic at the beginning of the class. And at the end of the semester or the end of the year, ask them to write on the same topic. Let them compare the two. It just, why does that work? Why does it work? So ipsative tests shift responsibility to students to self-assess. They become more aware of how they are learning and they build confidence when they do that. So day-to-day, students may not see much progress that they're making, but an ipsative test, and of course you could do this once a month, they'll see how much they've learned. Number 2, spot quizzes. We mentioned this already. These should be formative, not summative. And they should be used all the time just to check whether students have understood and can apply the content of a lesson. So why does this work? Formative spot quizzes are not threatening. Students accept that it's to measure whether or not they're learning or not. And it's not about judging them. It's just to see, do you understand? They can share, say, how many people got 10 out of 10? And say, no, that tells you something about your teaching as well, and not just the students' performance. So you have to somehow figure out, use spot quizzes to check them, how their progress is going. The third one is app learning. Now, there's lots of apps out there, and I'm sure many of you have used some of the ones that I've shown right here. Like Duolingo, they provide language learning opportunities outside of class. Students can use them anytime, anywhere, and of course they are built-in feedback constantly on them. So that's really great for students because they get immediate feedback constantly to tell them whether or not they're doing well on a particular topic. Now there are some problems. They can test themselves, that's great, but a problem is that many of these apps are boring. With Duolingo, I went to a talk at a conference presentation by someone who did a huge study, and she said 3 weeks. 90% of Duolingo users only last 3 weeks, and then they get bored and they just give it up. They don't do it any longer. I don't know, maybe some of you have been using it for years, but it's a problem. It can be boring. And the reason why is because it's not connected to what they're studying in English. That's why Startup and many other Pearson products, actually, it has its own app, but it works directly from what's in the unit. And then they can go and see all of the content immediately. This content has all of the videos and all the audio clips. It's on their phone. So they can, they're not going to do it all day long. They're going to do it for 5 minutes while they're on the bus or just before bed or waiting at the bank or something like that. But it just gives them a chance to do the same things, check their progress, but then it relates back to the book that they're studying. My English Lab is another feature of many Pearson books. And again, this is all about allowing students to self-assess to a certain amount. Once they do and submit their test, it goes straight to gradebook, so the teacher gets it. So that's great. With my English Lab, there's a lot of self-marking, multiple choice, drag and drop tasks are available, including some with audio. They have to listen, and then in some cases they listen and they do a recording, and then they send the recording to the teacher as well. But it does it all automatically, and so it's not having to organize their emails or anything like that. It's a very simple system for students to use. Why do students like it? It seems like it's gamified in some ways. It seems like a bit of a game, and there are some games in there. But the students can also take their time, and this is a big advantage. They're self-paced. They can be done when the student is ready to do them. It's not like in the middle of class, say, oh no, I'm tired today, or I feel sick, or I'm not in class today, or anything else. The student is perfectly ready to say, okay, I'm wide awake, I've got a cup of coffee, I'm going to do the test now. And they can do their best. So this reduces students' test anxiety. It's the big thing. Number 5, let the students create the test. What? Are you joking? Let each student write 5 test questions and also talk to all the other students in the class to ensure there's no duplication. So if you have 30 students, you're going to get 150 different questions about the course. This is great for a final test. What happens? Afterwards, you choose 20 of the questions or 25 of the questions for the actual test. You don't tell them which 25, but they've seen all of them. Why does this work? To create test questions, students have to review all the learning materials in detail. When they share their questions with other students, they also share the answers, and so everybody studies. So actually, it's subversive. It's subversive because everybody's doing what you want them to do. They're reviewing the entire course. They think that they're just writing questions, but really they're reviewing the course, and that's fantastic. Also, they're communicating with each other, which again, that's our big ambition. So create rules. Number 6 is inductive learning. For any rule-based form, such as grammar or genres like essays or short stories or paragraphs, ask the students to look at samples and figure out the rules or figure out the format. Let them debate these in groups until they agree. Now, it's very easy to see with English, with an essay, because we've got lots of examples of this. And an essay is always well explained in this ways. But even if you have this, it's much better, you could give this to students and they'll go, oh yeah, okay, got it, whatever. But actually, if you ask students to look at an essay and say, how is this essay organized? Then they have to think much more. And when you think about it, when you reflect on it, when you consider it, you're going to basically put a lot more effort into it. Startup, one thing we have is inductive grammar worksheets. So what it does is it actually asks the students also to find the rules or to think of, how do the rules work. So they read the sentences. Notice the nouns with no article. It doesn't have an, a, or the. So why not? Why not? So, so students have to go through and figure out which ones are which. And then they have to think, what are the rules that create this? You don't have to write the rules for them. You don't. Why? Because they'll just forget the rules. But if they do a task like this, they're going to figure it out. Why does it work? Students try to find the rules are using problem-solving skills and finding ways to make sense of the rule-based form or genre. The process doesn't just make it easier to understand, it makes it more memorable. And that's really what we want to do, is make language memorable. Number 7, self-reporting with marking rubrics. Marking rubrics are commonly used by teachers. I hate them. I absolutely hate them. But students can both create the rules and use them to self-evaluate and peer evaluate. What's the matter, Professor Beatty? Why do you hate rubrics? I find them too complicated. And often, especially even for very young students or beginning students, they have all of this language, and I can't figure out what the hell it means. I have no idea, right? So, this one for exemplary in the top right, develops ideas cogently. How many second language students know the word cogent and cogently? Organizes them logically with paragraphs and connects them with effective transitions, clear and specific introduction and conclusion. How do you measure that? And when you compare that to the previous ones, the other ones, there's such fine differences. For students, it doesn't make sense. But students can create their own rubrics, and they can say, what's important in your writing? What's important in your speaking? And it's a good step to peer editing, because then they think, okay, so when I speak, what is really important? Well, I guess my pronunciation, am I using the best words? What about my patterns? And they'll start thinking about it. Makes it all memorable. Video and photo projects. Everybody has a video camera now and a camera, right? They've got their phone. Fantastic. It seems like every student has one now. Students can do personal projects on the unit theme using their phones to take photos or make short videos. They can share these before class for peer feedback and then present them, or just give them to the teacher, send them to the teacher, and the teacher can look at them. Better to share them. In Startup, again, this is just an example here. They have, in the first 4 books, media projects. So here they give an example. The character talks about something. In this case, it's a restaurant, favorite restaurant, and then there's some simple questions on that. And then you ask the students to create their own photos. Choose a meal you want to talk about. It can be prepared at home or ordered at a restaurant. Take 3 to 5 photos to talk about it. So again, the students are going to do this, and they might do a video instead. That's fine. But it's very, very personal. It's individual. It's reflective. No two students are going to do the same restaurant. And it makes it much more interesting. When they're finished, they're going to show their parents or their siblings. They're going to show their friends, and then they'll hand it in to the teacher. So they'll get a lot of feedback on how well they've done. And because their parents will say, oh, why didn't you say this? Or why didn't you talk about this? Something else, right? It's a great thing. Why do they work? Photo and video projects encourage students to personalize the unit content. Students are likely to self-edit, doing several drafts. It's like a selfie. Nobody takes one selfie. You always take 3, you know. Individual topics mean students are not competing with other students, and they'll share what they do. What about presentation projects? Ask students to give short presentations on topics related to a unit, either individually or in groups. Students can think of their own topics. You don't always have to assign the topic. Say, we've just been studying, you know, a unit about, you know, getting your first apartment. All right, think of a project to do. Everybody do a different project in your groups. Videos of the presentations can be recorded on their phone again, right? So here's an example, again, from the book. And this one is about healthy eating. So then make your own presentation. And this is about home remedies. You know, everybody's mother has a secret recipe when you've got a cold or a stomach ache, right? So what are some home remedies? So talk about that. And again, it's going to be different for each student or each group. And so then they go through the same process and they present. Why does it work? Asking students to prepare short presentations forces them to use a range of reading, writing, listening, and speaking skills. So a presentation is great because, of course, they've got to write a script, they're reading it, they're thinking about it, they're discussing it with someone else and listening to what they say, and then finally presenting. Problem-solving projects. This is a little bit different. The last one was presentations, but this is problem-solving. Problem-solving is something students can do with any topic that they study. It doesn't matter if there isn't a clear solution. So if I had a project about pumpkins or something, I was saying, you know, what is all the things you can do with pumpkins? Or that would be one problem or something like that. Or say, you know, a lot of pumpkins are wasted, you know, because they all grow at the same time and then people don't do anything. What would be your solution? It's better for students to work in pairs or groups because they can knock ideas around. Again, in the top 2 levels of startup, they have problem solving, and this is an example about the Winter Games. And this is how many athletes have been banned from the Olympics over the years. And you can see some years, quite a few. So this continues. So, you know, the solution, what's the solution? How do you reduce cheating among athletes? And so again, nobody knows what the answer is. It's open-ended and it could be 100 different answers. So students can think about that. Why does it work? Asking students to solve problems in pairs or groups help them improve their critical thinking and negotiation skills. Unconsciously, they integrate the content, the vocabulary, and the grammar they have learned in the unit. It's the same with the other projects, right? These last 3 are really all the same. Content, vocabulary, and grammar. Students have to use them in order to complete the project. Open format projects. Here's another idea. Presentations, posters, essays, and paragraphs are only a few of the ways students can demonstrate what they have learned. Give students the option to choose other formats. This goes to the heart of the question and say, how can you show me what you know? That's what I ask. How can you show me what you know? I ask my own students this. Okay, can students demonstrate what they know with a puppet show? I don't know, in a dance, in a piece of art, in a play? The freedom of a creative challenge is motivating for students, and it's more interesting for both teachers and for other students. So it creates a lot of motivation among students, but an excitement in the class, because everybody's going to be doing something to, you know, impress each other. So it becomes kind of a fun thing. Portfolios. Throughout the semester, students can collect examples of their work and then choose the best examples for summative assessment. Students can keep digital videos of the presentations as well as digital files of other works, like their essays or anything like that, a photograph or just the Word file. Keep copies to show next semester students, like I do, right? Like you saw my poster and you saw my the students' work. I keep all those because I want to use them again and again. Why do they work? Students who keep portfolios of their own work need to constantly evaluate what they have done and try to do better. It's another assessment type that shifts responsibility to the student. Now, I've got an unusual picture here. This is actually one of my best friends, a guy named Greg Pace, very talented Canadian ceramic artist. And he went to Banff School of Fine Arts in Canada. And at the school, they do something unusual in the program. He was there for 2 years, and they say, at the end of the 2 years, you're allowed to take 5 things home, only 5. And of course, in 2 years, he creates hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pots. Why did they do that? It's because of the portfolio approach. It forces him to edit. It forces him to think, is this the best I can do? No? Throw it in the garbage, start over again, and keep going. And it worked. He's one of Canada's top ceramic artists. Gamification. Gamification is a trend in education where learning objectives become the game objectives with paths to reach them through practice and repeated play. So turning learning into a game of some kind. Again, I'm not going to do this. I'm a lazy teacher, right? I'm going to ask my students to do it. Here, this next unit, you look at it, your group look at it, and you turn it into a game somehow. Give each group of students a different unit. Why does it work? Gamification appeals to students' sense of fun. Ask students to create a language game based on existing games, but using the content, vocabulary, and grammar of the unit that they're studying. In Startup, we have lots of simple language games that are kind of examples, but students will find examples out in the real world. Number 14, make students the teachers. Portions of each lesson can be taught by the students. Give them time to prepare and ask them how they think they should be assessed on their teaching. So, in my own classes, I do this. I can ask the students, okay, I want you next week, I just want you to take for 5 minutes, I want you to teach the other students about one idea. And I give them the idea that they should be teaching, or I say, choose what is one thing you would like to teach next week out of the textbook, that you think is interesting. And so every week it's another student or another couple of students, and they go through. Try this with grammar. Grammar is a great one because then students are having to figure out the grammar themselves, and then they explain it to the other students. The best part of this is that those students become experts, and everyone knows it. Say, this is using the subjunctive test. I can forget about that. Oh, hey, on Henry, how to use the subjunctive test again? Tell me. And so, you're creating little experts in the class who can help each other. So it's a great benefit. So why does it work? Joseph Joubert, French philosopher, had this famous phrase. He said, to teach is to learn twice. And you all know that. Whenever we teach, we're really learning something in much more depth. And so students have to study, think about it in a different way, and they're really going to learn. When they're asked to teach part of a unit, students get a better understanding of the challenges of teaching while making use of many communication skills. But it's this challenges of teaching that they start to understand, and they get more respect for what the teacher does. They understand how difficult it is, especially if students are misbehaving or not paying attention. It's fantastic. I've seen it work, and really it's a wonderful way to sort of get students involved in their own learning. And of course, it uses many communication skills. Number 15 is predict the test. So what is this? Ask students to work in groups to predict the content of an upcoming test. What? What do you think will be on the test? It's just, you ask it, you open it up. You can spend a whole hour on this and say, what do you think will be on the test? Start, and get the students say, okay, write them up on the board or put them into the chat, right? And the students can discuss what will be tested, but then they can rank their choices. What do they think is most important that they've learned? And so if they come up with 20 or 30 ideas, say, okay, great ideas, now rank them. What do you think is the most likely things that will be on the test? What? Okay, so then they go through and they have to say, well, really, I think it's going to be about this unit or this grammar, or it's going to be this vocabulary that we learned. This is going to be on it, or how to write an essay. That's going to be the number one thing. And they'll go through and they'll put up all of these ideas for you. Some of them might be quite surprising for you. So why does this work? Why does this work? The task provides teachers with an idea of what students think they have been learning, what they think they've been learning. And it's not always what you've been teaching. The students will also remind each other of important points they may have forgotten. So say, oh, I think it'll be about the past perfect tense. Say, when did we learn that? I don't remember that. And of course, then they're going to teach each other. They're going to study. It's a fantastic thing to motivate students. You can discuss the mistaken points, say, no, I would never test you on that. But other ideas, you can say, yeah, I probably will use that on the test. You have to tell them. But again, they're going to have a lot of ideas, anticipation about what on the test. But really, again, it's another subversive task. What you're really doing is getting them to review the materials in a complicated way. Okay, standardized tests. Oh, many people go, oh, I hate standardized tests. The trouble is that teachers may give imperfect tests, and they may not always assess fairly. It's hard to tell. We all had them. We all had easy teachers. Teachers that were too easy. We all had teachers who were too hard. All of us did in different times in our careers as students. Standardized tests are used in summative ways to give students and their teachers feedback on student abilities and the success of classroom instruction. If you have a standardized test and all of your students, do extremely well, you think, good, I'm doing a good job. If all the students who get A in your class are also getting A on the standardized test, you think, good, I'm doing a great job. But if there's a mismatch there, and there's a big differences, then you have to maybe rethink your teaching. And maybe you're testing too hard or too easy. So you have to make sure that you're really covering the content in some way. Why do they work? Standardized tests are carefully developed by experts in assessment who constantly check the accuracy of the tests against thousands or even millions of users. They're huge, huge tests. This makes standardized tests valid and reliable. What does it mean, valid? Valid means that if you test the same student 10 times, you're going to get the same answer. Not a different answer every time you test the student. Reliable means that if you test, generally, the same test over years, it's going to give the same kinds of answers. The same student, if they did it, a month later, would get the same score. That means reliable. Sometimes governments try to make their own standardized tests. They think, why should we pay for standardized tests? We can just make one. It's always a disaster. Not always, but it's often a disaster. They're seldom able to compete with all the resources that the big publishers of test materials have. So anyway, but it's what you have to work with. The last one, the 17th one, is something I call good things. And it's kind of an unusual assessment, and it's kind of a completely different strategy. Do this. When you mark a group of students' essays or presentations or any work that they do in the classroom, keep notes on the best things done by each student, including one thing by each of the least able students. Share these with everyone as examples. So, like all teachers, when I was a very young teacher, I used to go and take the worst example of an essay in my class, and then I would take off the name, but everybody knew who it was anyway, I realized. And then I would go through the types of errors that students were making and talk all about that. I don't do that anymore. I give them feedback. I give individuals feedback, but then I started doing something that I call good things. And good things, what I do is I tell them what has each student done right. Just what is one thing, and not just what they do wrong. Each student is given a reason to feel proud, and that is motivating for further learning. So this is with my master's students in one of my courses, and it was on a pedagogy course. And Yuri, this first one, she had a good title. I can't remember, but that may have been the only good thing about her essay. It's the title. Maybe the rest of it was terrible, but still, she had a good title. So, okay, I can put up something for Yuri. I do it for every student. I put up one slide for every student, right? Gloria quoted Noam Chomsky, and it was a good quote. I thought that was worth sharing. Sandra, she incorporated a reference really cleverly and very well into her paper. Daisy talked about, had a nice metaphor. Language is like a bridge which lets us be connected to the entire world. I love that. I love that idea. So I put them into a little slideshow, and I show them after I've marked the essays. I've given them back so they've gotten lots of feedback. But again, it gives everyone something to be proud of. You know, Yuri, even if her essay was terrible, you know, she goes back, her husband asked her, how was your class today? Oh, well, the teacher loved my title, showed the whole class. So it's something for her to be proud of. And again, it's motivating, and we have to motivate people to learn a language. Okay, so what do we know? Well, that's a lot of information. Basically, assessment can be better. Question your assessments. Do they measure the right things? Try alternative assessments. I've given you lots of ideas, and we're going to share this PDF with you afterwards if you're curious to look at it again. There's also the video will be saved for this. You can watch the video again, maybe with some other teachers if you think they would benefit. Integrate technology, such as phone apps, but be careful. Make sure that they're not boring. They should be interesting and really helping align somehow with what you're teaching. Get students involved more in assessments. It doesn't have to be a big secret all the time. You know, ask them what they think would be good on a test. Consider textbooks and other tools that make assessment more effective and more efficient. It's really one of the easiest things that you can do. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And I think we've got about 4 minutes left for questions. If there's any questions that you have afterwards, there's my email, and you can contact me. I also have a website with some blog articles, and PearsonEnglish.com startup is where you can find the materials. Okay, let's go back to the thing. Okay, all right. So we've got some questions popping up already. Okay, fantastic. Janina, I hope I'm saying that right. How do we work when we have a class with different levels? Excellent question. Excellent question. So I think you have to measure them, you know, both similarly and differently. What are we trying to do? All the time in education, we're always trying to figure out how can we help students? How can we help each student individually? Because it's like a driver's license. And yes, you've got some that may take longer to learn how to drive, but you want everybody to be able to drive in the end. So the thing to do is to sometimes consider maybe having some separate tests. And maybe you write some of the tests a little bit easier, or you give a little bit more support in some ways. It's interesting. We've got again, with Pearson, they have an exam view. They use it a lot. But an interesting aspect of it, you've got multiple choice questions, but then you can change it. You can change it from 4 answers to 3 answers, or even just 2 answers. So you can maybe do that for some of the least able students to build their confidence, On the other hand, sometimes students need to see where they are. And they need to say, you need to say to them, you say, you know what? You're in the lower part of this class. You're less able. Let's try to improve. Leslie says, how can we get our students to care more about their own personal achievements more than just simply passing exams? This is a big one, a huge issue, Leslie. Thanks for asking this one. Yeah, students say, all I want to do is pass the exam. That's because they don't see the usefulness of English. Why don't they see the usefulness of English? Because they don't see when they're going to use it in their either further studies, or they don't see that they will use it in their career in any way. So we have to find ways to personalize and individualize the learning. So I talked about that. I talked about giving them more personal projects, more individual things that they can do. Then they start realizing, yes, the things around me I can talk about in English, and that's going to be really useful to them. So that can help them to motivate them a little bit more. But it's an uphill battle. I acknowledge that it's a really difficult challenge. Yeah. Okay. Kotivi says, at my school, a big problem we face is students cheating on tests. The students are very clever and seem to find new ways to do this every year. Absolutely. I saw a video yesterday And it was fantastic, a really smart teacher. He had in a classroom, he'd pull down the blinds so the students couldn't look out the windows, but he had a secret purpose. He went in and when he went in, he went over to the light switch and he turned off the lights suddenly. And one student's phone was shining. So he knew that student was cheating. We weren't supposed to be using their phones. I think we have to be clever. I think we have to be more clever than the students. And one thing is just to have a question. Say, why do you think students cheat? Just ask them that question. And usually it's the reason why they cheat, which is that they think that the test is more important than learning, right? The test is more important than learning. It's like anything in life. It's like me reading a recipe and saying, oh, I don't really care. I'm going to fake it. I'm going to make this pie, but I'm not going to use any butter or any flour. No, of course not. You do it because you read the recipe and you want to do it perfectly because the outcome is important. So cheating is really a sign that students think that the test is more important than actually using English in their lives. So we have to change something about that and make them much more aware about how it is important. You can also ask students, this is very subversive and sneaky yourself, but you say, I've heard that a lot of students have very clever ways to cheat. What are some ways that students are cheating now? And they'll tell you. They won't even think about it. They'll just tell you because their friend of friends have done something. And then you say, oh, good, I'll watch for that. So be sneaky about all of this. Yeah. All right. So let's see. Any other questions do we have? Let's see. Okay. Do you think traditional assessment will change in the short run? I think probably not. It's kind of based. A lot of traditional assessment is based on comparing things over the years. So people want to see, are students doing better now than they were 10 years ago? But alternative assessments are starting to be recognized as being more valid. I think what we really need to do is to ask the question, say, are we giving students passing marks on standardized or traditional assessments when they can't communicate at the end? For example, I remember when I was younger, you'd have tests on grammar, and like students have to write out all the grammar rules. But again, you're never walking down the street and somebody says, oh, excuse me, can you tell me how to conjugate the verb to be? Yeah, nobody says that. Nobody asks you to conjugate verbs. They ask you to use the language to communicate. So we have to start questioning, are the traditional assessments measuring the right things? And the only thing we're really measuring or should be measuring is communication abilities. So, yeah. All right. Okay, David asks, how can I tell students that studying English is not just a certificate, but a door that can open many opportunities for them? I think, again, one of the things we do as teachers is we tell. We talk. And we have to sort of maybe talk less, tell less, and ask more. So we have to ask more questions. So you've got 30 students in your class. You say, so what do you think you will use English for later? And let them answer. Let them start coming up because they respect the peers. They're not going to be, maybe they're not going to become an English teacher like you, but they're going to be doing similar jobs. And somebody says, "Oh, I want to work on a cruise liner. I want to go around the world." "Oh, I'd like to be a pilot, or I'd like to be a flight attendant, or do something else, or I'd like to work in international business, or I want to." And all of a sudden, they're looking around, saying, "Oh, I had no idea. Yeah, I guess that makes sense, right?" So they have to find personal motivations, but they're more likely to find it from thinking about it because you ask and what other students say, rather than just you telling them that it's important, right? It just doesn't make sense. My father was an accountant, always told me, save money, do all this. What he should have said, is, what's something you'd like to save money for? That would have been a good question. If I said, oh, I guess I want a car. Well, how are you going to save for that? And how, and just instead of telling me, he could have asked, and that would have been maybe more effective. All right, Kotibi says, I'm the one teaching my students. Shouldn't the tests I write be good enough to decide what passes and fails? Well, yeah, of course. I mean, that's what we feel. We're experts, after all. We put years into learning how to be teachers. We've, maybe educated hundreds and hundreds of students, right? Why aren't we good? I think the point is that we don't get enough feedback from other from other tests. Other tests have to be able to tell us, are the tests that we're using effective in measuring what they should be measuring? And sometimes they're not. So really, other tests, external tests, that's what they can really do. They can tell you whether or not the tests that you're creating are valid or not. That's just a big thing. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ken.
Thank you. Yeah.
Really appreciate you being here today.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity. Thank you so much.
Have a great day.
Okay, bye-bye.
So, we have reached the end of our TDC 2021. We want to thank all the speakers, consultants, and publishers who have participated, but especially to the international community of English teachers who have been connected this day with the sole objective of expanding your knowledge and to develop your educational work despite the circumstances of the last 2 years. We are sure that you will be well prepared to continue responding to the challenges that are presented to us today and also in the near future, with a return to face-to-face classes and all the opportunities that this represents. Once again, we would like to remind you that if you wish to obtain your certificates of attendance, you must be registered and have attended to 100% of our TDC Cusco edition conferences. That is to say, 3 conferences. All registered participants will receive an email with a link so that you can register your information for the certificate. If you have still not registered yet, please do it now. You can find the link in the comment section. Have a nice Saturday afternoon. It was a pleasure to be your host today. Take care.